You're listening to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by a machinist. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson from Protea Machining, and this week I am joined by Tony Brown of Autosports Engineering. Welcome, Tony.
Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, guys.
So, for anybody who doesn't or hasn't seen your Instagram, what do you guys do? Where can they find you online? All that good stuff.
Instagram is Autosports with an S _ engineering. And the website is the same thing, just no underscore, autosportsengineering.com. I pretty much specialize in a lot of automotive parts, whether it's dress up or just adders or accessories or conversion kits, stuff like that. A lot of Jay-Z, but my background originally started from a lot of Honda stuff because I was always a Honda guy that kind of migrated into Subarus and Evos. And as soon as I got into the manufacturing end of things, after about the first year or two, I kind of gravitated over towards a lot of 2JZ stuff because that's where all my buddies had grown up and decided they wanted to make a lot more power and needed parts and, nature took its course. And I've been stuck in that platform for about the last 3 years. Not a bad thing, but definitely I have a lot of plans for some other stuff coming down the line that'll help me branch off a little bit.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I imagine there's a little more money in the 2JZ crowd than the Honda crowd. I know, I started buying all this Honda stuff for my MR2 build, and the common joke I kept seeing pop up was like, Honda crowd is kind of a cheap crowd, or, trying to budget build a lot of stuff. And so people were constantly making fun of that, it seemed like.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, the market has shifted a lot. You're going to have a lot of the cheap guys, let's be honest, that are going to be on the lower end of the spectrum. And then you have very little in the mid range. And then you have the guys that spend a ton of money, where you'll have a guy that has a $50,000 Honda. But the general public still associates Hondas with most of the cheap guys because that's what they come across on a regular basis. So as far as my decision, it's more of a business decision. I do have some higher end Honda stuff that I've been prototyping for probably like the last year that probably hit the market later on this summer once I get some of this other stuff situated. But I love Hondas. I love them to death. I drove them for years, even as my dailies, Accords, Acura TL, stuff like that. But realistically, the Jay-Z stuff, these guys spend more money. Even on the lower end, they end up spending more money on their bill.
Right. Yeah. Well, before we nerd out too much on car stuff, let's get into your backstory. How did you get to where you are now?
All right. Well, first off, I am only 41 years old. So, and as far as machining, I purchased my first mill the end of 2015, which was a brand new Haas VF2. Pretty basic, nothing special on it. Threw an auger on it, threw the wireless probe system on it, added the HSM look ahead function. Only cost me 62 grand to begin with, which in the grand scheme of things, that's a pretty low investment. Now, that's the initial on the manufacturing. Now, how did I get there? We're going to go back probably to, let's go back to when I was in high school. I was always a techie guy, always real good at school. And it was partially, I wouldn't even say partially, primarily because I had a really strong memory and I retained information. So I was able to learn things. I was able to learn things that I wanted to learn. And the other crap I just learned just to get a really good grade, pass, and then didn't care about it anymore. So that's just how I was. So I was always into computers. I built my first computer when I was probably 14 years old, which is, this is probably like 1993.
Yeah, I was going to say that the computers back then were...
Yeah, so then it's like most people aren't thinking about computers, much less trying to figure out how to piece together parts and put one together from Tiger Direct or anything, but that was just my go-to. I just like building stuff, and more importantly, I like taking things apart to figure out how they work. I didn't always put them back together, but I learned a lot just by taking them apart. And to this day, I still buy a ton of stuff and take it apart and probably never put it back together. But that's how a lot of my knowledge came about. Now, in high school, when I was sophomore year, I decided to take a CAD class for architecture. It was pretty fun and I really liked it. And I kind of gravitated towards that. And I stayed in the class. The following year, I took the advanced class where I was pretty much, almost a teacher's pet because I was the most knowledgeable you know, guy at that point because I spent a lot of time. You know, some guys went to auto auto tech for their stuff. I never really took that class. You know, I was into cars, but it wasn't my passion or my driving point when I was a junior or senior in high school. I was still tearing apart my cars, working on them. But by the time I got to my junior year in high school, I had a really good job in sales, working part time. So that's where most of my time was. So anything that needed to be done in my cars, I just pretty much made the money and paid one of my buddies that was really good at it to work on the cars. Now, the CAD class started me on a journey that eventually got me to the point where I was here, where I'm at now. Now, obviously, AutoCAD is not parametric modeling with what we're familiar with now, but as far as the design concepts and running through the software, I got really good, really proficient at it, and it was something that always stayed in the background of my head. So I decided, hey, you want to know what? I like doing this, but I'm going to go ahead and when I finish up high school, let's see about trying to be an architect. That was my great idea. So I pretty much had a full ride at most of the state universities in Florida. And so I went to one for architecture. By my sophomore year, I was like, honestly, the only way to put it is this shit's for the birds. Because I was like, it's not that I wasn't good at it. It was just the whole way how they run architecture programs. I was like, all right, well, you're not going to get rich unless you just fall into designing a multi-million dollar building that everyone falls in love with. And it's not even about the money. The fact is you're pretty much designated to being a grunt for so long throughout your career that you don't really get to make any critical decisions. You're pretty much just designing based on what other people are telling you you need to do. So your creativity is kind of limited. And then it's a 5-year bachelor's program and 2 years internship after you graduate. So I was like, hold on. So I'm going to go to school for 5 years. Then I'm going to get my ass handed to me for 2 years after that, make barely any money, and then still have to stick it out and listen to people tell me why this wall's design belongs over here 6 more inches because of this. I'm like, you want to know what? So I took my skills. I was minoring in computer science. So I took my skills and I was like, you want to know what? I'm going to devote most of this towards just dealing with the computer science side of it. So I left architecture. I finished up all my stuff with computer science. But like I said, I was on a free ride. Most people would have, left or figured something else out or might not have even gone to college. But I was like, you want to know what? All my friends are going to college. At least I don't have to go into debt to go to college. And if I stay around here, I'm just going to end up getting in trouble and doing something stupid. So I'll go off and figure out what I want to do. And, someone else is footing the bill as long as I can maintain my GPA. So while I was in college, the one thing I did not regret is I met my current wife. And we've been together for this point on. I have 2 sons. I'll get into them later. They were 13 and 14. But so my one goal was, all right, as soon as I'm done with college, I am going to go back home and I'm going to open a shop. I'm going to go and work on cars. And everybody's like, well, why are you still going to school? I was like, because I'm not ready to do that yet. This isn't costing me anything. And I'm honestly learning, not just educational wise, but I'm hanging out with friends, networking. It's something to occupy my time. I was like, I'll get to that. But I know for a fact I'm not going to use my degree. And people didn't understand it. I was like, listen, sometimes you got to understand. It's like, if I was paying for this, I would have left, but I'm not paying for it. So right. I'm going to maximize all of the benefits, all of the perks, all of the education and knowledge I can acquire that's being paid by the state and the government at this point. I was Definitely. Like, I'll get to my plan when I'm ready to get to my plan.
So what in college flipped that switch? Because you went from paying others to work on your cars to all of a sudden now I'm going to open my own shop. Was there a specific instance that you're like, oh, I want to make parts for cars or I want to work on cars?
Well, I knew you were going to ask that. This is what flipped the switch. When you're in college, even if you are working, you can't work enough to earn a decent living. I worked enough so that me and my roommates could have our own apartment even from freshman year, which were my best friends in high school, or one of my best friends in high school. So I never lived on campus. We lived off campus in an apartment. We had our cars. We went to work. We went to classes. But what happened was, all right, well, if you have a car, obviously shit's gonna break.
Yeah.
And even if it's just general maintenance, back then it's like, okay, well, I've only done basic repairs or installs. It's like, okay, well, I need a clutch in my 1993 Honda Accord, and I don't have a lift. I've never dropped the transmission in this thing. How am I going to do this? I have to pay people to work on my cars. So eventually, by junior year, whatever's going on with the cars, you're like, man, I can't afford to continue to pay for, repairs or upgrades or whatever it is. So I started working on cars or working on my cars. And I ended up starting like an online business that was actually pretty successful, where I got some wholesale and dealer accounts, and I built a website. And I ended up quitting my job because my website was honestly college at this point. My website was probably pocketing me about $7,000 to $8,000 a month. And you're talking, and you're talking, this is before everybody got on the internet. This is like when PayPal had just started out getting popular. But between eBay and my website, I was buying third party. I never bought them myself, but I just set up accounts with guys that were bringing in like JDM Honda swaps. And then so I was like, okay, I'd only make $200 or $300 middleman in the sale on a swap, but everybody's buying engines now. Everybody's trying to do a Honda swap in their older Hondas to go twin cam or GSR B16. Well, I was like, all right, well, you need so many other things to complete the swap. You need a wire and harness conversion. You might need a different distributor. You might need engine mounts. You might need axles. So what I ended up doing was setting up accounts with a lot of these mainstream companies that were supplying this stuff. So a guy might see my ad in back then, like Super Street or Modified, and they're like, hey, I want to buy this engine from you. All right, no problem. Engine is $1,800, but you also need this, and this. Oh, do you sell that? Yeah, I sell all of it. So I take a $1,700 sale and turn it into a $3,500 ticket. I take a $300 profit on the engine and I turn it into a $700 or $800 profit on the ticket. And I'm selling, on a slow month, 10 to 15 engine swaps a month. And then gradually I started adding different products. And, at this point, this is like 2003, 2004. So, like I said, there's not a lot going. The internet is there, but it's not like completely, saturated like what it is now. So I made a good living on an unlimited phone plan, a Nextel that I was paying like $500-600 a month to have unlimited minutes back then. But I was making plenty of money, and I ended up going to work at a shop part time, like my junior year in college. And the guy, he was from down south like me, but he was racing. He was traveling up and down the East Coast. His family raced drag boats. I mean, his shop was honestly the best that was in the area at the time, and he was really knowledgeable. He showed me how to tune. We had a dyno in house. I learned so much from this guy that it kind of inspired. I was like, you want to know what? I'm already doing the parts. I'm working here. But, typical shop stuff always has weird crap going on. I ended up working there like a year and a half, but the last 6 months, I actually just stayed and didn't get paid because it was hard for him to manage whatever he was doing. But I was willing to, just because, like I said, my business was making me plenty of money on my cell phone. So I didn't really care. I was really just working there because I liked it. And I liked the guys. Everybody, it was smaller because it was Tallahassee. So everybody knew each other. There were two pretty much rival shops, but I tried my best to keep what I was doing more low key because I was doing it before I started there. And I didn't want it to kind of interfere with the local business, but it got to the point where it's like more and more people found out about my site. And I was like, all right, this is becoming a problem. It never really got to that point, but I could see where it was starting to irritate my boss. I was like, all right, well, I've pretty much run its course. I've learned a lot. And so that's how I decided when I get done, I'm going to open my own thing because I was already knee deep in the industry, a year and a half in a shop. And the one thing, I've always been really good with my hands, even though I wasn't working on cars for, 10 years. So being mechanically inclined, it came naturally. I was always really fast, really efficient, good with hand tools. So it's like it was just something I was really good at, and I liked it. I could drop a Honda front wheel drive transmission at that point down and up in an hour and 15 minutes doing a clutch.
Oh, wow.
So I just got really good at it. It was just something that it just became a natural skill. And I was the website stuff taught me sales, taught me marketing. Cause like I said, I was running ads, right? And then I was also leveraging my ad space to get dealer accounts. Cause you call a company, they're like, oh, our buy-in, obviously, Precision Turbo. Precision Turbo is like, oh, our buy-in back then was like $5,000. I was like, all right, well, I'll do that, but I want to do, can you give me an extra 10, 15% on your turbos? If I run 2 ads over a 6 month period of time, I'll give you 25% of my ad space. Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll do that. So I leverage stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And then the same thing. I did the same thing with like Drive Shaft Shop. I told them, I was like, listen, I was already set up for like 4 full page ads, 2 half page ads, and like the rest were all third page ads. So I would pretty much pitch them to give them a percentage of the ad space for their product for X amount of issues to offset the cost of me buying in their initial buy-in to get the product line. And I did that, and I ended up with these really good accounts, really good discounts as a singular entity. And guys couldn't understand. It's like, how are you getting all? I was like, man, you got to figure out how to work the system and work. I was like, there's always a way. Some people don't think about it. There's always something that somebody's willing, if they can get something and they're not physically paying for it as like a barter, guys will cut you a deal. It's like, oh, you're willing to do this? Guess what? I'll do this because it's not physically me giving you money. I'm giving you my time. And most people tend to value their time at something less. And they're making the product anyway. So it's not like they're giving me product. They're just giving me access to the product for the fact that I'm giving them advertising.
Right.
So
That's
it's
genius.
a
I like that.
win-win. It's like, it works. It's a little bit harder to do nowadays because, everybody's advertising all over the place, and you can pretty much do it for pennies on the dollar for whatever you get in return. But back then it was like one of my best ideas that I came up with. And this is not like, at this point, I'm like 23, 24 years old.
That's great. Yeah. Well, yeah, back then, advertising in a magazine, like that's limited space. There's only so many pages, where now it's like, oh, well, we can roll through 50,000 different ads on the same banner on a web page, depending on who you are, your IP and your location and blah, blah, blah. So that was really smart.
Yeah.
So was all of that drop ship business as well?
That was 100% drop ship. I never bought any inventory. The only time I started buying inventory was like after I opened my shop, which were specific brands that those products were relatively inexpensive to bring in. And, like you familiar with like Innovate Motorsports for the wide bands?
Yeah.
When they initially came out, I was their number one dealer for the first 3 years.
No way.
Yeah. So, and it's because I came across them. I saw it. I was like, man, wide bands. I was like, this is a great idea because we only had wide bands on the dyno, and those things were expensive. And they were like the first commercially available wideband, the LM1 that looked kind of like a Game Boy.
Yeah.
But I was buying like 30, 40 of those things a month from them, like just pushing them. And I was selling them. But like I said, it's like you get in if you know something is a good idea. I was like I said, at that point, you could only get access to a wideband if you were at a facility that was tuning your car on a dyno.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I think I have a Innovate wideband waiting to go in the MR2. Maybe.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But yeah, I definitely, that's amazing. So let's get into how you built your shop then. What decisions did you go through? What kind of space did you get? How did that all start?
All right. Well, first I want to say that the shop idea was by far the worst idea I have ever come up with. And I'm not going to lie to you, but I'll explain it to you after the fact. All right. So when I moved back home, I moved in with my cousin at the time, my wife, then my girlfriend at the point. She was finishing up her last year, which was probably about like 6 months, a little bit beyond mine. So I was like, listen, I'm going to go back home. I got to start putting in all the groundwork, get all of this stuff set up. I'll see you in 6 months when you're done with school and you can move down. So I go and it's like, all right, well, I decided I'm going to do it with my cousin. I was like, we're going to set it all up. He's a full-time tech working for Toyota, a really good guy. And he would pretty much come in the evenings because he was the dealership was maybe 5 minutes away from where we opened the shop. It was pretty small. I think it was about like, man, it was probably like 1,400 square feet, double bay. So you could drive all the way through little or two offices up front. Um, but it was a pretty nice location. The one thing is it was clean, it was neat. He did good work, I did good work, but obviously having a partnership and living with your partner stresses both ends out.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine.
So for the best thing for us, we after the first year we decided to part. Not because of not of success of business. It's just like, listen, it was great to move in, but can't live with you and work with you part-time because you're going to work, you're stressed after you leave your job, then you have to come here at night and we got to work some more. It's long hours. My wife at that point had relocated. She's going to doing her pre-med now, commuting, and it's like it's a lot of stress. We're trying to get all of this stuff together. My wife is stressing me because she doesn't have any friends. I'm stressing because I'm trying to get the foundation of this business working. And the reason I say this was one of my worst ideas is because all of this combined, I let the one most profitable part of business lax, which was my online.
Oh wow. Okay.
Because I was trying to get so much stuff done and build the shop up locally and just, life challenges. And you're at this point, it's like, okay, I'm like 20, 25. And it's like, it's a lot. It's like you could do it, but it's a lot to be thrown out on your own trying to run a business and doing all of this stuff and going from where you're just dealing with drop ship and phone calls all day to physically dealing with cars and diagnosing stuff and fixing stuff. And I mean, word was spreading. We were getting the work in because the one thing was, I honestly would say I was probably about 3 to 4 years ahead of most of the other local shops because of everything I learned from the guy that I used to work for. I get back home, guys don't tune cars. Guys don't know about tuning. I'm starting to tune cars back then with like Honda. The guys are like, what's that? We're just putting a super AFC and a bunch of check valves on our car. And they can't, and they're trying to figure out why they can't keep up or beat any of the cars that come out of my shop. It's just because, like I said, I gained enough knowledge that I was ahead, but it's just, you're still learning and adapting, trying to get all of this stuff done. Plus life is thrown at you, So it was just a lot to do. So like I said, at the end of the first year, which was, we only signed a 1-year lease, we separated and I moved. Like, I was still in the same city. I just moved to a different location. And what happened was during that first year of business, I discovered welding. And you say, okay, well, how'd you get into that? Well, just like anything else, you give somebody something to weld enough times and they literally take out the axe and try and split your skull open to do like 3 welds and they give you a bill for $350, you get kind of tired of it. I was like, I can't make money if you're just welding on a blow-off valve. I actually mocked up all of the piping because we used to do some fabrication up at the shop in Tallahassee. So I was like, all right, I would just cut all the pipes, clean them, mark them, tape them together, bring them to this guy. And I was like, listen, man, you're charging me way too much because you're literally doing 3 or 4 welds. And I ended up buying a TIG welder. And everybody's like, well, do you know how to weld? Nope. But if that guy can figure it out, I'll figure it out. I've taught myself and learned so many other things throughout my life at this point. It didn't really scare me. So I was like, all right, I'll figure it out. And it took me maybe about 3 weeks of practicing. And I decided to build a customer, the first turbo manifold. The welds weren't pretty, but it never broke. And it did something that a lot of other guys couldn't do back then on Hondas, which it retained air conditioning.
Oh, that's a big thing, especially in Florida.
Exactly. So I started selling, or the fabrication stuff started growing. So when I split, I actually still worked on cars, but more so, concentrated on fabrication. So because at that point I learned like, hey man, you make more money selling your own parts.
Definitely.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to start making turbo manifolds and different stuff like that. I didn't need to make full kits because back then you only had like Full Race. And then there was another company that had the guys who used to work for Full Race started their own. I think it was Peak Boost back then. And and most of those guys are over there by you in AZ.
Oh, really?
So yeah, full race and Peak Boost, they were all Arizona based.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I was like, all right, so I'm over here on the West Coast, Florida. It's got a great scene in South Florida. So I was like, all right, we started doing the fabrication, but still trying to learn a skill. And when you're young, you think you can do it all and do it all at the same time, and it takes you a while to figure that out. So when I decided, oh, you want to know what? I'm going to return back to my bread and butter. I'm going to go online. Okay, I went back online and I didn't expect the guys to hit you with the demand that that you need or that you didn't expect. And all of a sudden I'm like, man, I'm used to only building like 3 or 4 of these things a month. And I'm looking at the list. I was like, dude, I sold 10 of these things in the last 2 weeks. I was like, how the hell am I going to do this? Plus do everything else that I got to do in the shop. So now, so like you said, your success is your worst enemy because you don't think, and these are all things that over time have gotten me better leading up to the manufacturing side that I'm doing now. So most of this blew up in my face. I was trying to put out fires half the time. It was okay. You know, it was generally okay, but it was really stressful. And I think I spent more time running around in circles than I did actually making any true progress or scaling because it's all of this stuff is all new to everyone. You know, fabrication and guys building turbo kits and stuff like that is still relatively new in the market. So anybody that pops up gets swamped with orders, and you would see it online, and everybody was like, "Oh, I've placed an order. I'm still waiting. It's been 3 months." It's always the same thing. Now the internet is starting to grow because forums are really big, and if you're starting to get a bad reputation, it's hurting your business, and it's like so. That was a lesson I learned back then, and I pretty much continued to refine my process up until probably right around the time I had my first son in 2007. And you kind of sit back, all right, now I got a kid. I can't really afford to make the mistakes that I've made on a continual basis because now I have responsibility. And then boom, 2008 comes in. I have another kid, 2 boys now. So all right, 13 months apart. So my wife hasn't been in school in a little over 2 years now. So I was like, all right, well, her career is kind of on hold, and sat down, tried to figure out, well, what are we going to do? We wanted to have children. Now they're here. Now we got to deal with it. I got to get my shit together because now it's 4 of us.
Right.
You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
so now it's like you can't, when you're younger and it's just you or you and your girlfriend, you can make whatever mistakes and usually rebound just by sheer effort and will when you're young. But the older you get, you start to tire of like, I'm just going to muscle my way through this whole situation. You're like, things need to run a little bit smoother, you know? so,
Right. You got to start
so
working smart, not hard.
exactly. So I was like, all right. So at this point, I had already gotten some parts every once in a while made in from billet from CNC from a local shop for a couple of things that I might have needed here and there. And this guy opened my eyes because his name's Adam, and I'll actually return to Adam here later. He was actually private labeling and doing a lot of the parts for Steeda as well as aerospace.
Oh,
This guy,
really?
this guy's shop was like 5 minutes away from my first shop where I first met him because I went looking for something, search online, and guys like, oh, there's a CNC shop over here. But he was always really nice to me. And you'd walk in there and it was like 15 Haas's, you know, and
Right. So not a
he
small shop by any means.
not a small shop, and he was good at what he did. I didn't know how good he was until later on. I knew he was doing work, but the one thing he always would try and fit my stuff in because he was a car guy as well. He was a Ford guy. That's how he got set up with Steeda and everything else. But most big shops don't want you hanging out, don't want you coming by on your lunch breaks. But he wouldn't care if I came by. I'm like, hey, I'm going to come by and hang out for a little bit after I grabbed lunch, and we would talk. And it kind of opened my eyes that there was a different way of manufacturing. And this seemed more scalable when you looked at it than how I was doing it. Because I'm like, all right, even if I'm welding, I get another guy to weld. It's like doing body work or having a body shop, there's only so many hours in the day and it's so labor intensive. It's like, how do you really scale that when anybody that you bring on that's working with you is probably going to get good enough that they say, hey, now I want to go out and do my own thing. So
Right.
now you got to worry about the fall off when that guy leaves, as well as trying to get somebody else in. So I don't think the fabrication stuff, only a couple companies have been able to, from my eyes, do it very successfully and scale it. It's hard.
Oh
Whereas
yeah.
with
Well, I mean, you need a person per welder, basically. I mean, up until welding robots and stuff, but even those have their challenges. But especially back then, you needed a person per seat. Like it's not like a CNC where you can hit go and walk away. You need a welder to weld.
correct. So struggled through most of that on my own. Like maybe before my youngest son turned one, through normal checkups, evaluations, and stuff. Or the pediatrician. I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
for the word. We end up finding out that they put him on the spectrum, so he's autistic. And they're like, your older son might also have slight autism as well. So I was like, all right, well, what does that mean? We don't really know. This is 2008, 2009. So I was like, all right. So now here's another challenge I have to deal with. So, but fortunately, they're fully functional. I mean, my youngest, he's a little bit verbally challenged. He'll talk to you when he wants, but nothing physical. So I consider myself one of the luckier parents that are out there. I love them to death. I drag them out, make them do things. Uh, so it's not that big of a deal now. But back then, you tell somebody that in like 2009, you have no idea what to think. And my wife is back in school. She decided to change her focus because my family, I don't know, I guess we're kind of like a Filipino family. We got a bunch of nurses in my family, you know. So she was originally trying to do podiatry. So she was going pre-med. I had her talk to my aunts. My aunts told her. So she ended up switching over to just doing nursing. So I was like, all right, so at least this is a little bit more stable. Then the
Right.
state of Florida decides, or, the nursing associate, whoever governs all of this is like, oh, we're going to pretty much get rid of LPNs. We're only going to have RNs within the next 2 years as the minimum requirement for a nurse. So, oh, crap, she's in the LPN program.
Oh no.
Halfway through. Okay, well, where's the closest one? How many credits are they going to transfer? So it's just so much to deal with over a period of time. So it's like, come on, man. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But so, like I said, life and business are going together, and I'm legitimately just trying to keep my head above water. Just put out the fire, operating on minimal savings, hoping nothing happens to your car, hoping you don't have any emergencies, you don't have insurance. It's like, come on, dude. I was like, what could possibly happen next? But I managed to get through all of this. My kids start school, life gets easier because now the one thing is I don't have to pay for daycare anymore.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and don't ask me how, because this entire time my wife isn't working. So I'm doing all of this, dealing with the stresses of business, everything else, and I'm supporting a family of four.
Oh, that's rough, especially on a brand new company.
Yeah, essentially, because your company is like, it's evolving. It's like, I'm not really, like I said, I don't feel that I'm making any progress, but when I look at other people out there, it's like, okay, well, I actually did pretty good. It wasn't great. I made it through by the skin of my teeth when you really think about it, but it did teach me a lot of lessons. And all of those lessons, through whatever iteration of my business it might have been, brought me to the point where I was like, I need to build something that's sustainable, that I could take care of my family, that if my sons don't go through life, going to college, getting regular jobs or whatever, that they have something that they can work with me or something that can continue to provide for them while they figure out what they want to do. I was
Right.
like, I didn't have the easiest life growing up, but it wasn't the worst. I was pretty much self-sufficient, from at pretty much any age. My independence came when I got my first job at 14, and I never looked back. I never asked for a dime from anybody else for the rest of my life. I found a way to make my own money. You know, even when I was broke, I was like, well, I'm broke. I don't really have any, I didn't want to ask anybody for money. I was like, if I get myself in a problem, I got to figure out a way to get myself out of it. And so that's just how my independence was, where it's like, okay, it's kind of like me against the world. And I got to take care of those that are standing behind me, which are my wife and my sons. But progressively, through those decisions, through countless failures of whatever it was that was going on, I decided, hey, my at this point, probably 2012, 2013, I had another guy that was welding for me, but he was wrapping up college. And I was like, listen, when he's gone, I'm not going back to welding every day. I was like, that's not going to happen. I was like, not going to happen. So I need to come up with a contingency plan on how I can continue to develop and get products made without, having to rely on individuals. Cause, he's young, he's in college too. So it's like, okay, guaranteed when he's supposed to work on a Saturday because he didn't finish something on a Sunday or on a Friday, he's not showing up. And Monday he's going to be hungover. So it's just an inconsistency. And business at this point is starting to progress, but it's still to the point where it's relying on other people. It's not fully scalable. So I was like, all right, let me see if I can look to get some parts made in China. All right, well, unfortunately, most of the stuff, depending on what it is you're trying to do, you're talking about volume.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, okay, well, I got certain pieces, like my more popular items, even my fab items, I gave to like US based companies that obviously their stuff was done in China, but they were pretty much private labeling some of my more popular pieces so that I could concentrate on just the more critical, like stainless stuff that, you want nice, pretty wells, stuff like that. The non-critical pieces, they were willing to do smaller quantity runs that I could afford. So I was like, all right, that's working. But same thing, I was like, well, I still don't want to be in this sector of manufacturing because in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking about Adam's shop. I was like, man, I love watching those machines run. I think it's a lot more potential. So I formulated about a year and a half plan. And that began with, I'm like, all right, well, first thing, let's do some research and figure out what one of these things is gonna cost me. So you figure it out. You're like, man, that's a lot of money. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
let's figure out how I can afford to pay for one of these things. So you
Right.
talk to some guys, you're like, oh, well, we can finance you with this, this, and this. It's like, okay, well, guess what? I don't have bad credit. I have no credit because my business is been cash. All my cars I bought cash. I don't use my credit. I've never had to use my credit. So they're like, oh, well, that's not bad. So, all right. So here comes another task that I took on, credit repair or credit building. So over the next year and a half, I decide I'm going to boost my credit. So I get it from where at this point, this is where if you don't use your credit for, I think it's either like 8 months, they 000 your score. So my credit score was 000 because I hadn't used it in like 4 years. So I was like, all right, well, that's easy. They're like, so I do my research. I get my score up over 700 in about a year by picking up certain trade lines, different stuff, couple cards here and there, making payments. I even bought a trade line that put somebody else's stuff on my credit for their usage. Got everything
really?
situated. Yeah. Now they've changed enough stuff so that the credit bureaus pick that up and they know that's what people are doing. You can take a family member, add them to your card. If it has a high limit, you get their entire history thrown on yours. So people used to sell their trade lines. They're like, hey, give me $1,000. I'll add you to my thing for 6 months.
Wow.
So, but like I said, there's always a way. There is always a way, and people figure stuff out. And the thing is that eventually people figure out what other people are doing. They're like, no, that's not fair. We're going to change that. So that's what all the credit bureaus ended up doing now. You can't get away with that. But, back in like 2014, 2013, you could get away with that. So I was like, all right, so I know what I want to do. I know how I'm going to do, or I have a partial plan on how I'm going to do it. Now, leading right before this, what kind of put me over the edge where I said, hey, I'm going to do this is because at this point, probably 2011, 2012, I became more of an independent contractor where I still did my own stuff, But I was getting calls from everybody that wanted to do stuff they couldn't figure out how to do. You know, if they needed to do something custom, I was getting a really good reputation as being one of those guys. So I met an individual that he decided he was going to, after his retirement as a professional athlete, that he wanted to do car based stuff. Because, and I met him through because I had actually done some work on his cars and other stuff. And he actually decided, hey, I want to compete with some of the best. I want to build all these great projects. And his idea was, let's build a brand that can rival the biggest other companies that were out there, like AMS at the time. So, you know, you're talking about a whole bunch of reverse engineering, 3D scanning, manufacturing. And while I was working with him, I ended up getting in contact with a guy that had a machine shop, and his family actually, they have all this great equipment, but it's for like not primarily for their business. They do a lot of like golf cart tops and like canvas tops for the boating industry. But he had just gotten like $160,000 live tool Herco lathe, like a TMX 8, I think it was, and like a VMX 10 and VMX 30. And I was like, but he would do jobs for us for, you know, really good prices because it wasn't their primary concern. He had these things like making random brackets and stuff for, you know, his family's company. So once again, I got inspired. I was like, all right, man, you know, this is definitely something that I could do. And while I'm with this guy trying to get all these projects off the ground, I'm not the money guy, but I'm still doing my own thing on the side. But I'm kind of brought in more of as like a consultation with like equity promises and everything else. Well, this disaster, which I walked away from, culminated because I got brought in again for a project. Are you familiar with like the Polaris slingshots?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, these guys are like, oh, we want to turbocharge a slingshot. Okay, bet. No problem. Right up my alley. It's an Ecotech. I've done Ecotech work before. I've tuned on HP tuners. Not a big deal. I already know the motors because I was doing some Cobalt stuff at that point. So I've always, even though I started as a Honda guy, I've always tried to familiarize myself and learn about different engines because I'm a car guy. I'm not locked into just a specific brand guy. And it's helped me just grow my skill set. And
Definitely. Well, that's a
also,
smart engine to know because it's so widely used. I mean, I think the Ariel Atoms were using it for a while. Like
mhm.
that's a pretty common
Yeah, I
engine.
ended up doing the turbo kit on an Ariel Atom because I was a Honda guy and I knew all of the Honda K series stuff. So I ended up turbocharging the Ariel Atom.
Oh, nice.
You know, so that's how guys are like, oh, well, we need this, this, and this. Do we know anybody that can do this? Well, this guy over here. And I would take on all challenges because to me, I love a challenge. And I knew I could get it done. If I couldn't get it done, I would just be like, nah, I don't want to have anything to do with that. So I got to work on some interesting projects. Now, to the slingshot. The slingshot started because this athlete's next door neighbor had a slingshot. And he decides he's going to, like, you know, do what all the guys now are doing a slingshot. So he's going to put wheels on it. He's going to put a stereo system on it because he was like a wheel and tire guy anyway at his business next door. And they're like, you think we could turbocharge it? Hell yeah, we could turbocharge it. Easy. Let's build a turbo kit. So I build a turbo kit. This bike gets so much attention online because it was actually the first one that out of all of them, and this is probably like the first 5 to 6 months the bikes are out. Well, bike, motorcycle, but and it catches the attention of Polaris North America. And
Ooh, which could be a good thing or it could be a terrible thing.
well, we're about to go through all of this. So it ends up they're like, hey, we have our annual show in Vegas, our international show, which it's kind of like an off-road show, but it's primarily kind of like what SEMA is for cars. This is all for off-road. So Polaris has this huge debut. They're like, we want you to build us a bike. We'll provide the demo bike. You guys have to cover all of the parts, but we'll give you the bike when it's done. But we're going to take it to Sturgis in North Dakota, I think it
Mhm.
is, and also Daytona Bike Week. After we do all three shows, including our big show in Vegas, we'll gift you the bike. All right, no problem. So make an agreement. Hey, you want to do it? Yeah, I can get it done. How long do we have? Oh, you guys have 3 weeks. What the hell do you mean we have 3 weeks? Well, we just found you and we already have three or four of the bills that were done, but they got their bikes 3 months ago. I was like, what?
Ugh.
So guess what? Everything falls into my lap because this guy is like, he's a good guy, but all of the heavy lifting has to be done on my part. I'm the only one that's mechanically inclined to get all of this shit done. So I'm like, all right, man. So we crack the whip by the skin of our teeth. We get it done. Ship the bike. Out of all four bikes that were in the booth, hands down, our bike was the best. Like from people walking by, because like I said, this bike is the second bike ever with air ride. So you have people walking around, hovering around this bike all day, putting it up and down on the ground with like 22-inch custom 3-piece wheels, audio. We molded and done like a in-dash iPad with Bluetooth to control the entire audio system. It was a really good cooperative effort between the guy that was next door that had his bike, because like I said, he's a wheel and tire guy. He also had the stereo guy, and I did all the mechanics. I built a custom, because at the last minute, you're like, oh, we don't want the bike to be turbocharged. What do you mean? Oh, well, so we scratched that. Now I have to build. So, all right, we got to do custom intakes, and now I have to build a damn header, which I hate building headers. So I have to build this badass header on this bike. We get it all done. 3 weeks, ship the bike, gets transported. Everybody loves it. It does Sturgis, and then it does Daytona Bike Week. We get the bike back. The bike is pretty much ragged out at this point because it's like the paint's chipped. Mind you, we custom pulled all the panels, did a full color change on this bike, everything. In 3 weeks. But
Oh boy.
so then here we go. Hey, we love what you did with the bike. We're partnering up with I forgot the name of the company, but they actually did some of the earlier Ken Block Ginkama videos, and they also do all those Polaris videos where the guys are like jumping over trains or whatever foolishness, kind of like the Ginkama style video.
Yeah.
So they're like, hey, we are bringing in Tanner Faust, and we need you to build us a couple bikes to use to film this video. And we do multiple, or we always do multiple vehicles, because what most people don't know is just like Ken Block is these guys wreck these things.
Oh yeah.
While filming. So it's not, you see one car in the video, it's not just one car.
Right.
Yeah. So once again, great opportunity or destined for failure.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So I was like,
make it or break it kind of thing.
All right. So I'm like, all right. So mind you, I'm still pretty much like an independent contractor, but all of this shit keeps falling in my lap as far as the heavy lifting. I was like, all right, man. So what are we going to do? Well, creative control at this point got wrestled away from me. And I'm like, listen, I don't think we should do that. I don't think we should do this. I think we should do this. Stick to this plan, execute it, hit the timeline. Well, because I'm not writing any checks, I'm not responsible for that. Ultimately, I was like, you want to know what? I'm going to do whatever it is that you guys want me to do within reason. Because at the end of the day, at this point, okay, well, we're supposed to be progressing on a plan, which is supposed to be generating income. Nothing is locked in, but my time is still being devoted to other projects when this stuff isn't paying my bills. So it's like me working 2 full-time jobs now.
Right.
I got to do my stuff during the day, and essentially,
yeah.
So that countless delays, whatever it was, but it turned out good. The video is actually still up there. If you go on YouTube and you type in like Tanner Faust slingshot, you will see that video. Those bikes, my hands are all over those things. So
that's awesome.
But at the end of it, I was done. I was like, I'm never working with anybody else again. None of the deals or agreements that we had were fulfilled in a timely manner. And I can't keep dividing my focus like that. I'm willing to give you my time if I think that there's going to be a really good end result. And that's why I was willing to do it. Well, guess what? It's okay. Well, part of the agreement is, all right, well, we're doing this. I think we're getting parts made by my other buddy, the one that I said does the canvas stops and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, listen, man, the line is growing. We have so much potential. Polaris didn't ask anybody else to build these things. We have an in with Polaris North America. I was like, let's not screw this up. Well, it got screwed up.
Oh, no.
So at that point, I'm like, listen, we were also supposed to do, the original bike was supposed to be sold. And I wanted to buy a CNC machine so we could start doing in-house manufacturing. At that point, okay, there's enough to generate income. There's enough for sales. Now I can gain a salary from all of this invested or time that I've invested. Well, at that point, it didn't get done. Bike didn't get sold. No CNC, nothing. The only thing that came about it was like a really expensive 3D scanner, a Creoform, which to me wasn't as practical as a mill, considering we were having a bunch of parts made that we were selling as a private brand for the slingshots. And since we had these brands that was growing, the fact that we're about to release this video would have put us at the top echelon of all of the brands for these bikes.
Right.
So I pretty much walked away. I had already started all of my credit stuff, and I was like, I kind of put it on pause, and I was like, you want to know what? This is already in the works. I call back Haas. I'm like, listen, this is what I want to do. What's necessary? They're like, well, I still have a registered business. So fortunately, I still have registered business. So they're like, oh, well, how long have you been in business? I was like, well, this is going to be a brand new registration because I'm not going to tether it to anything else I've done in the past. I was like, I want a fresh start. They're like, oh, but you've been in business. I was like, all right, no problem. So they're like, well, based on this, they play the same games with a lot of people, kind of like the financier negotiation. And they're like, well, we'd have to get like 20% down. I was like, okay, well, so I spec out a machine. I'm like, all right, well, what's this going to be? I was like, that's not bad. Like 17,000 for 17, 18,000, somewhere around there. I was like, all right. Mind you, I've never touched a mill
I was
or a
just about to ask
CNC.
that. So at this point, you are like, all right, I'm going to dump 18 grand into something, never
18
touched
grand
it.
that I don't have.
Right.
like 18 grand literally that I'm about to leverage my newfound glory hole that is my credit score to go and buy this thing. I've never touched one, but when I was working on these other projects with this guy, we did do where I went back to full-time SolidWorks training for 2 weeks, 9 to 5. So I refreshed my SolidWorks skills to get all of this stuff done, because that was the one thing I will say that I did benefit from that, is that he was willing to go to the classes. He pretty much wanted me with the classes because I was a lot more efficient with computers, stuff like that, my memory. So we both went to the classes, but all the design and everything else was always on my plate. So my CAD skills were up to par because all the parts we'd been making for the previous 2 years were all stuff that I designed. And that was also, some of it was reverse engineered through the 3D scans. So I was well capable of designing parts, and seeing the limited amount of success with the slingshots and what we were able to do, I was like, listen, the potential is there. Whether or not it's that or something else, I'm going to pull this trigger. I'm going to jump off this bridge just like everything else I've done in my life. And I'm going to build a parachute on the way down. I'll figure it out. I was like, what do I have to lose? I was like, I have nothing now, essentially.
Right. Only can go up from here.
Yeah, it can only go up from here. I was like, you want to know what? Some people are scared of that. It's like, listen, man, I grew up broke. I'm broke half the time, but I'm not in poverty. And I bet on myself my entire life. And I haven't had an immense amount of success, but I haven't had failures, and I'm still alive every day. And my kids are eating healthy, stuff like that. And it was also timed around the fact that my wife was about to finish nursing school, which nurses are in such high demand. It wasn't even an issue of her getting a job. We knew she was going to get a job. She had a job within, I think, like 7 or 8 days.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So now, for the first time in our relationship, there's 2 incomes in our family. So I was like, you want to know what? If I can afford to take a risk, take on a payment, do whatever it is, now's the time. Because at least I know we'll still have a roof over our heads. So I spec'd out a machine. I ordered a base VF2. I spoke to some guys, and my friends are now like, well, everybody asks the same questions. Do you know how to run that? Not one freaking clue. What are you going to do when it gets here? I'll figure it out. I don't really care. I'll figure it out. I was like, I figured out everything else. I taught myself how to tune. I was tuning professionally for probably about 9 years, doing multiple systems and standalones. I taught myself how to do progressive wiring, build a few harnesses. I taught myself how to fabricate, I've taught myself a lot of skills in my life. I was like, and here's the thing. At one point, I had a different machinist that was making parts. And this old guy was literally, you walk in the shop and it was just him. It was probably like 800, 900 square feet with just machines packed in tight. Every time you walked in there, you got a contact high because all he's doing is smoking weed in there. And I kept telling myself in the back of my head, I was like, listen, if this dude can run a machine high and get shit done, there is no way that I can't figure this out. I was like, there's no way. I was like, it's impossible. Plus, at this point, CAM software is starting to become more visualized. So to this day, like guys ask me, it's like someone will come by the shop, they'll see a machine running, they're like, man, that looks like a lot of stuff going on. And I look at the G code scrolling on the screen. I was like, dude, I have no idea what any of that is. I was like, I don't have to. I know the basics. Like I can tweak code to do certain things that I want. And that's just from me just doing the research, read the manual, figure it out, edit a code, change a tool, change position, just basic stuff. But nowadays CAM is so like powerful that to me, it's a higher skill to learn and more difficult, the design aspect of manufacturing than it is the programming and running of the machines. So I have a little bit more freedom. So that's why I say it's like you guys are super talented when it comes to trying to get stuff to do exactly what's required. Whereas with on my end, I think I'm more so trying to create a product to solve a problem and then working backwards from there. Like, okay, I need this to hold this on this engine in this position.
Yeah.
So let me get it done, and then I will figure out how to tighten everything else up around the modeler, the design. So it's like that's why I say to me, it's like what I have to do is I have to literally pull ideas out of thin air and create them because part of my design process is realistically I just come up with an idea and now I got to figure out how to do it. And here's the joy of it because most of the items, if you look at what I do, I don't try to do anything that has a ton of competition. 3 to 5 people worldwide is like my go-to because that allows me to not have to do high volumes of each individual product every year. And since I'm one of the few that makes it in-house, I get to control all of that. And I also don't, I get the ability to also pick and choose what I want to do when I want to do it. And also, if like part of the reason that an extension of that is part of the reason I don't make a lot of Honda parts is Honda parts have so much competition that you sell that guy a part, he'll order it at 4:30 in the afternoon, and he's already sending you an email at 6 o'clock asking you if you ship.
Right. Where is it?
Whereas what I make now, because there's not a lot of competition and with COVID and everything else, it's like, okay, before it was like, all right, well, I'm trying to get as much stuff out the door as possible. But like the last year, I've come to the point where it's like, listen, man, it's going to get there. It's going to get there. If I'm out of stock, I'm going to make more. But if it's out of stock, I'm also not going to try to sell it to you. I just mark it out of stock and refuse to take orders because it's not worth the aggravation. Because people's mentality to a certain point have shifted during COVID because they realize, hey, we can't get everything as fast as we want. The whole being spoiled with Amazon, got a lot of customers jaded. I was like, dude, that's not how it works in reality, especially with what it is now. That's why I don't make mass volume products. Like if you have to wait a week or two on a product from me, they usually know they can't get it very many other places. So they usually wait and don't stress or bother me. And the other side of it is you'll have a guy that'll spend $50 and be more of a problem than the guy that'll spend 5,000.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
The guy that'll spend 5,000, even if you're like 3 to 5 days late getting something out the door, he doesn't bother you. The guy that spends $50 because he waited till the very last minute to do something that, everybody has the same excuse in automotive. You're like, hey, I got a show this weekend. I got an event this weekend. Dude, there's an event and a show every weekend. If you needed it for this weekend, you might have should have ordered it last week.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, and the guy who's spent $5,000, he's probably been waiting 6 months to a year on a build, whereas the guy spending $50, he's like, "Well, I just want to make my valve cover look good for this weekend," and it's like, "Yeah, okay, buddy, but
I'm like,
that's not
yeah.
going to happen."
So it's like part of that is because, I mean, the stress has grown, and now I'm 41. It's like, man, I don't want to deal with half of this shit anymore. I just want to do what I want to do, but I also want to enjoy my life,
Right?
and
Yeah.
it's,
So
certain
back to
points
your machine, though.
oh yeah,
So
yeah.
you bought this machine. Did you even have a space to put it?
No.
Okay.
No. So now I ordered a machine, and now I have to run around to try and find a space that has 3 phase that I can afford. So I'm like, all right. So now I was like, so luckily I find a space that's like, being in business in the area for so long. I typically would move my shop maybe every 2 years, just because, your landlords try to raise your price so much every time your lease is up. Most of the times, if you just move across the street into another building, you get a better rate and you're locked in for like 1 or 2 years.
Right.
You know, some people find it inconvenient, but for me, it's like I don't really try to get tethered to a location. These guys are going to follow me because of the quality of my work. So I knew the area, so I found the spot. Boom. So now I have a space to put this machine. The next thing is they're like, okay, it'll be ready to ship. I think they said in like 4 to 6 weeks or something. And I was like, all right, well, guess what? I don't have any software.
Right. Yeah.
I don't have any software now, because I was using SolidWorks, but the SolidWorks licenses were from the other guy that we were doing the slingshots with. He had multiple SolidWorks licenses. So I was like, all right, I'm not even going to use his stuff, because it's like we're already on a kind of shaky information. Mind you, I didn't tell anybody that I bought this thing. And that's usually how I make most of my moves. I tell my wife, and she doesn't really know what it is, because I've been watching YouTube videos on routers and CNC machines for like a year straight, like nonstop gearing up to all of this. So she's like, and she pretty much gives me a lot of leeway on what I do, which is like, listen, if she doesn't bother me, she doesn't ask me what I'm spending, how much I'm spending. It's just, I'm responsible enough to make sure that everything gets taken care of. So it's like, usually if I go out and do something, she finds out at the moment or afterwards, because, but that's how it is. It's a great relationship between us, because she gives me the freedom, and I have enough responsibility or wherewithal as far as my decision making, that I don't, just do crazy shit to put us in jeopardy financially. Even, granted, we don't have that much finances, but we're not going to be, poppers on the street.
Well, she trusts you, and that's
Yeah.
important for sure.
Yeah, so I get all of this stuff up now. I'm like, all right, I need something. What am I gonna do? I'm talking to software companies, because I think that's one of the places I didn't look into the cam side during all of this research. So now I'm getting hit with astronomical costs on software.
Right.
So,
you got 4 weeks to figure out how to afford 20 grand in software.
yeah, so I'm like, oh man. So believe it or not, what ended up being the best option at the time, after I tested the software, was Autodesk Inventor, because it was a smooth transition from all the knowledge and experience I had with SolidWorks into Inventor. Outside of maybe 2 commands, everything else had the same theme or layout and names. So it was really quick and easy. And Inventor, this was the very last year, which was 2015. They were doing a perpetual license.
Oh, nice.
So I was able to kind of not weasel, but I negotiated the hell out of this price. I got it for $4,500 with the HSM.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So by the skin of my teeth, now I have to figure out. So quickly, I do a few jobs, boom, 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 get the money, order software. I was like, sweet, software is good to go. Next issue. Dude, what are you doing about tools?
Right. Tools, tool holders, coolant.
I was like, oh my God. So fortunately, I got a 5-gallon pail of coolant that came with the machine, that the HFO, or the Haas outlet. Back then they were giving out, I believe it was a 5-gallon bucket of Valcool. So I was
Okay.
like, all right, at least I got coolant to start with. I have no idea. I didn't know how long this stuff lasts. None of this is a factor in my mind. I was like, listen, just get it here and let's get to work. And now it's tooling. I ended up looking around, and there were a couple deals. I ended up talking with the guys over at GMT, Lucerne,
Hmm.
and I bought one vise, one dual station 6-inch vise. That's all I could start with. But for what I was doing, I was like, listen, I'll work with this. I can add to it. I was like, it'll work. All right, no problem. Then I think I bought 6 tool holders, 6 or 7. I think it was 2 like drill chucks for holding drill bits and a bunch of like ER32 collet holders. So I had 7 or 8 tool holders in my 20 pocket umbrella changer to begin with.
Right.
But I was ready to go. Now, here's the thing, which I had to come up with a plan, which I'm like, all right, well, at this point, maybe a year or so before, I had sold my dyno. I had an all-wheel drive dyno. So like I said, the last 2 years, I was pretty much a freelance contractor, where my welder was working out of a friend of mine's shop for stationary work. I was doing a lot more stuff online. So I really wasn't tethered to a location. So it allowed me to go from shop to shop, different projects, and running around and tuning on different people's dynos. So I was still making money, partially fabricating. I was still making plenty of money tuning, engine management, on other people's dynos since I didn't have mine anymore. So I was like, all right, well, the dyno alleviated me on a monthly payment that was the equivalent of what my loan payment on the VF2 was. Now, what a lot of people might not understand with like, I purchase every single machine I have through Haas themselves. You guys are like, oh, well, you can get longer terms through somebody else. Well, Haas doesn't have an APR, which makes it affordable. They charge you a flat percentage of the total financed amount. So typically, most of those are below 3%. So you pay 3% on a $100,000 machine, you're only paying $300 or $3,000
Right.
on your machine. And then they just divide it among, 48 months. That's your payment. Where somebody else, you can finance for 7 or 8 years, but you're going to end up paying 30 grand on interest. So that's part of the reason why I continue to purchase through them. That's just a little side thing. So my payment was 1,100 or 1062. My dyno payment was 1,100. So I basically, the way how I looked at it was I swapped one piece of equipment that made me money for another piece of equipment that can make me a lot more money.
Right. And you can walk away from.
Correct. And I'm like, all right, so now I have to figure out like a true plan as to how am I going to make all of this work? What are you going to do? Well, number one, I was like, listen, I'm not going to figure this out overnight. So I'm going to be absorbing the costs and doing a lot more work, tuning cars and fabricating to cover this cost while I learn. How long am I willing to be in that learning phase? Well, my goal was to be within a year, be comfortable with the machine. So I was like, all right, within a year, my goal is to be comfortable with the machine. So I'm going to do different little small projects, do stuff for local guys, do my own thing. At this point, I know I'm not really ready to go full out with like my own brand and my own lineup. I need to get to the point where, like you said, I can walk away from the machine. I know it's going to do what it needs to do. And I was willing to take the risk, but also know that it's not going to happen overnight. This is something brand new to me, and I'm pretty much going to be learning on my own. So I was like, all right, a year to get comfortable, a year and a half, I have to phase out one of the other 2 things of income that I'm doing so I can start putting more time into the machine. And in 2 years, the second point of income should be gone as well. So at the end of year 2, I was like, I should be in here running this machine every single day, making product and making money. And that's the goal that I came up with. So most of the time, my machine was idle. I might run it an hour, I might not run it for a couple days, but most of the time that VF2 was idle because I still had other things that I was doing. But I had a plan and I was sticking to the plan. And lo and behold, that plan executed 100%. A year and a half later, I decided I was going to stop bringing cars into my little workspace to do fabrication. 2 years later, I sold all of my tuning software, all my Cobb, everything that I had gotten, all my European stuff for doing Bosch and Siemens. And I was like, well, here we go. This machine's got to run every single day. And that's to the point. So now we're pretty much at like 2017 is when I'm full in on product development and creating a line and a brand for the public.
Awesome. And it seems to have worked out pretty well.
Yeah, but I'm still taking crazy risks just to bigger rewards and still a lot of headaches, but I can't really complain. I mean, now the other thing, 2018, the end of 2018, I made an agreement with my wife. She's originally from Tallahassee with all her family. I'm from South Florida. So I was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. If you can get a job, obviously when your 2-year contract is up, we're going to go ahead and move wherever you can get that job, and I'll relocate the business. Because my goal was to set everything up so that I can do all my business would be back online, just like my original college business.
Okay. Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
So she got a job. I was like, listen, find somewhere in the Central Florida. Because realistically, my goal at this point, I was like, man, you want to know what? I want to buy a piece of land or buy a house that has land. South Florida, that's hard to do. I was like, and if you can't do it, it's super expensive. So I was like, Central Florida is the way to go. You can get outside of Orlando or outside of Tampa and buy land and, have a big yard or whatever. I was like, I really just don't want to be around people. I've been around people my entire life. They're stressing me out. I was like, I got all types of other crap going on. So that's how we ended up moving up to Central Florida, how I ended up meeting Nick and stuff from when I was up here. But so she took a job out in the Orlando area. I relocated the business. And I will tell you right now, which it was by far the best decision for our family and business that I've ever made.
And is that when you moved into your new facility that you were just posting about?
No, this is the first one that I moved to that was up here. That was 1,400 square feet, which is the one that's down the road from Nick at P3D.
Okay.
Now, so I signed I don't even remember how long this lease was. I think it was 3 years. Yeah, 3 years. So I signed a 3-year lease. It's 1,400 square feet. It's more space than what I had before because the space I had before was like 1,100 square feet. So I'm like, sweet, I got space. I'm by myself. All of a sudden, my productivity goes off the charts because I don't have anybody coming by on a daily basis to sidetrack me. Because remember, where I'm at now, I have friends, I have family, people I grew up with. So it's you're bound to be distracted on a daily basis. So now I'm by myself in a shop all day with just me and my machines and my computers. And all of a sudden, the first year that I was here, which is full solid 2019, my sales doubled.
Wow.
Just because I wasn't not like super hyper focused, but on a daily basis, I was getting a lot more done. I was stress free. Our cost of living had significantly dropped because obviously, Central Florida's, rent prices. We're in a 2-bedroom apartment now, but it's a 2-bedroom at this point was like $1,500. The thing was like 1,300 square feet. It was almost as big as my shop. But in South Florida, that would have been $2,000.
Right.
And that's actually, no, not even a 2-bedroom. It was a 3-bedroom because I turned the 3rd bedroom into an office where I would, have another computer to do work while I'm at home. So it's just the health issues also. It's not that I had health issues. It's just like part of the agreement. I was like, well, we want to also be able to do more as a family and I want to take care of myself. So I get up here. Obviously, my wife, she's a nurse, so we have great insurance. So I start going to see, my checkups and stuff. My blood pressure is like 40 points higher than where it needs to be. But within that first year of being up here, it drops significantly.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there's also a health reward, the stress, everything else, and part of like the cost of living also allowed me to adjust how I ran the business, where now it's like, okay, it's more on my terms. If I don't want to do this or do this job for this person, or this part or whatever, I'm not going to do it. You know, earlier on, if someone brought me a job, even though I'm trying to do my own thing, I would do it because, okay, it's extra money, whatever. And sometimes you make it out without too many headaches. And obviously you do jobs for people all day. Sometimes it just becomes a headache. You get paid, but I was like, listen, I'd rather make less money and just have less stress. That's all I care about at this point. I was like, the money will come. I just don't want to deal with the stress anymore. I was like, I've been like kicking ass and taking names my entire life. And like I said, most people haven't done what I've done up until this point. You know, it's a family of four. And for the up until the last 2 years, it's been single income as a self-employed individual running your own small business. So it's a lot of stress. So I got a lot of stuff that I just don't want to deal with anymore. But after the first year, it's like I couldn't believe, like, it didn't seem that I was that busy, but when I looked at the number, I was like, man, this is incredible. And I'm only getting started. So certain things, you know, started actually visiting our family. We went up to Tallahassee, saw her family a couple times, ran down south, you know, couple things like more freedom. I saw my family more that year after we moved than when I was living 15, 20 minutes away from them.
Right.
Like they would never see me because I was always working,
Right.
you know, unless it was like a special event, they would not see me, you know? So it's just certain things changed because I had more time and the stress was just gone, like almost overnight. You know, I was dealing with a new type of stress, but nowhere near as to the level that I had before. So now we roll up into, I would say, what year are we in now? 2022. So, all right, year two. So 2020. Yeah, 2020. I decide we're going to go on vacation to Jamaica with the rest of my family for like a family reunion. I didn't mention it, but that's where we're all originally from. I got here when I was 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
so I hadn't been back since I was 11.
Oh, that's a big thing then, for sure.
Yeah. So, but my family goes back religiously, like multiple times a year. I just never went back. You know, I was knee deep in just, you know, I don't get PTO days. I don't get vacation days. So
Right.
you got to work every day and that's just what it is. But now things are a lot easier. So we decide we plan this vacation for March of 2020. Right. My birthday is in March. We're down there. A bunch of my family's birthday are in March. Everything great. We land the next day. The U.S. shuts down for COVID
Oh,
while we're in
jeez.
Jamaica, right? So my birthday is like the day after all of this starts, and now everybody's down here. It's like probably like 20 of us. Actually, no, it was probably more. It was probably closer to like 30 of us because it was a big event. We were supposed to be there for 10 days, and so now everybody's worried about this and that. And like my aunts, my wife are like, oh man, now we got to go and deal with this because they're all nurses.
Right.
So we're like, all right. So people are asking me like, well, what are you going to do? I was like, well, I don't know. I was like, I'll deal with it later. I was like, there's nothing I can do. I was like, this is the first time I've been here in 29 years. I was like, I'm going to enjoy my damn vacation. I was like, my only concern is that we can still get a flight out of here. So we finished the little, I think we did like 5 or 6 days with them. Then I was supposed to go and see my mom, which she still lives in Jamaica. She travels back and forth. So my brother took his wife back home at kind of like a little honeymoon. So we were all staying in my mom's house. So we're like, all right, we're going to do 3 days with my mom. And I had booked the last 3 days in an all-inclusive resort. And everybody's like, man, are you going to fly? I'm not going anywhere, bro. I was like,
I'm already here.
I'm already here. I was like, I don't want to go to deal with the shit show that's going on right now. You got people fighting over toilet paper and all of this crap. And here's the thing, being a pretty much a native Floridian my entire life, my pantry is prepared for hurricane season. So year round, not this last minute shit. So I was like, bro, we got food, we got this. More importantly, I have money. And unfortunately to say it, but in America, if you have money, you can find a solution to most anything. So I was like, I'll deal with whatever it is. I have enough money put away that I'll figure out how to get whatever I need. I was like, I was like, who runs out of toilet paper? And why would you be trying to buy more toilet paper and fighting people for toilet paper? Because I was like, toilet paper is one of those things like popcorn. You go to the store, it's like, yeah, I don't eat popcorn that bad, but it's buy one, get one free. So I buy like 4 of them and they're in there because they last forever. It's like canned goods. I was like, I go to buy toilet paper, I buy a 24 roll or a 24 pack. So I'm thinking, I was like, all right, well, I got plenty of toilet paper. I don't have to fight people for toilet paper. And the one thing that was kind of funny, I was like, man, I parked my truck in at the airport and I had just bought a 24 pack before this happened. And it's on my back seat of my truck. So I'm like, holy crap! I hope nobody busts my glass in my truck to steal this pack of toilet paper because it's parked in the parking garage at the Orlando airport. And I'm like, oh my god, this is. I was like, so whatever. So I enjoy my vacation. We stay, and it was one of the most peaceful things because even while the family was there, so many people aborted mission and jumped back on planes to leave that the tourists were gone. So we went to the beaches. The beaches were empty.
Oh, wow. So you
We,
got the
we
place to
went to
yourself.
restaurants. The restaurants were empty. We went to the resort. I think we saw the same like 12 people all 3 days.
That's awesome.
So everybody, I was like, dude, and I'm the type of person I like doing things. I'll do group settings, but I love more private or just one-on-one, just small things. And it was one of the best things I've ever experienced. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And people were like, well, everybody else is in a mass panic.
Right. Yeah. The world's falling, down in Florida, and you're in Jamaica living it up.
Yeah. So I was like, all right. So now I'm like, all right, well, they canceled our flight, but I was watching that. So I was like, all right, no problem. You can't even get through the airlines to answer or to figure out about rescheduling or anything. So I was like, I don't even care. I'll buy 4 different tickets on an airline and I'll just deal with that. I ended up not even flying back to Orlando. I ended up flying into Fort Lauderdale and just renting a damn car and driving up to Orlando because it's like 2.5, 3 hours. I was like, it's normal drive whenever I go see my family. So I was like, not a big deal. I was like, whatever. Got back home and now we're like, all right, well, now what are we going to do? Well, my wife has to go to work. So right. I was like, all right, well, first thing I got to do is evaluate the situation. So I evaluate the situation. I do what I can. I buy whatever I can get. I figure out whatever it is. And we're in good. I was like, only good part is I was like, she's not going to lose her job. And believe you me, before they started giving away checks, I was like, I think I should actually start stocking up on certain things. And I started this before when COVID was in China. Because there's few items, like I order a bunch of fit-ins and stuff that at the time they're actually less expensive for me to just order 500 fit-ins from over there and bring them in to use on my assemblies versus me buying it here. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to order whatever randomness, like the flex line hoses, stuff like that for fuel pumps. I was like, let me stock up because these car guys are about to be stuck at home and they're going to be in their garage. And this is before anybody even saw this, but I've always been able to like read situations outside of the normal purview that other people look at.
That's smart. Yeah.
So I started stocking up so that I was like, listen, half of this crap that we do need from China, even if it's sold here, it comes from there. So if China shuts down, you're not going to be able to get it. I was like, I know I'll be able to get my material, but there's certain things that complete an assembly that I can't ship a product out unless I have this stuff. So I started stocking up on that. And I actually started doing this when I was in Jamaica. So I started ordering stuff while I was in Jamaica because I was like, yo, this is about to get worse because they're starting to randomly shut stuff down. It is before they realized that they changed and say, oh, if you're an essential business, you could stay open. But a lot of places had to tether up shop, shut up. So I was like, all right, so I'm buying all of this stuff. And all of a sudden, I think this was March. April was like the second half of April was bananas. This is before checks went out. Checks start going out in June. June, I did like 2.5 times my normal monthly sales.
Holy cow.
I couldn't, and mind you, I skipped this, but at the end of 2018 or 19, So after my first year in Central Florida, I bought a used VF4. I got it for 30 grand.
Oh, nice.
The machine is fully loaded. It came with probe, the finer pitch ball screws. The guy had three of them. It was a big manufacturing facility over in Reno, and he sold all three because Haas had a sale where it was like when they were doing buy, if you spent over 200 grand, they were giving you like 20% off or some foolishness. So this guy bought three or four brand new VF4 SSs and sold his older 04, 05 machines. But this machine, to this day, I still run it more than all of my other machines because it's not the fastest as far as spindle. It's only 7,500 RPMs, but it's got a big table. So I can walk away from it longer than I could with my VF2. So I could load up more parts. So I have time to go pack boxes, answer phone calls, do emails, just other stuff, which part of the key we're going to get to why that's important coming up. So that machine was there. It paid for itself on my Black Friday sale. I only do one sale a year for 5 days. And it's always a killer sale because people know I don't discount my items during the year. So, and my rationale behind that is if you discount your product all the time, people just sit around and wait.
Right. Yeah. Well, they know that the price is not the real price.
Yeah. Or also, guys will spend the time to call you asking for a discount or different stuff like that. It's well established my brand does a discount, except for that time of year now. So people, I'm pretty much, my sales stay steady throughout the year, because what happens when there's a holiday coming up, the guys that discount their stuff, their customers will wait. So 2 weeks leading up to a sale, your sales tank.
Right.
So people don't think about stuff like that. I think about stuff like that, So I got that machine. It landed. It was ready to go. Unlike my first machine, I could only buy 8 tool holders. This machine, I'm already experienced. I already know how to run it. I just had to figure out the differences in the older control, which at this point was when I called Nick because Nick, his controller is more similar to that versus I had the classic on my VF2. So he walked me through doing certain things, but boom, machine paid for itself within 60 days. Best investment ever. Won't sell that machine anytime soon. So, all right. So this is part of the reason why I was able to increase my productivity when COVID started and demand went through the roof because now I actually had 2 machines. I didn't buy my second machine until I think like 2 months after I paid off my first machine, which it was a 4-year loan. And 2 months later, I bought this used machine. I just so happened to stumble on it, and I had enough free cash set aside that I was able to jump on it and get it. And it turned out to be a good investment at the time because lo and behold, 4 months later, COVID.
Right.
So now everything is going great. I made a bunch of money in June, and here's my dilemma. I have a habit of just trying to spend and invest all of my free cash. I am not a cash rich person. I have assets and I have other things. Cash does not, from the way how I grew up and how I've done things, cash to me doesn't get me to a goal. Some guys like to sit and look at their bank account. I don't really care. I was like, it is what it is. But if my cash is working, I know that I always have something to fall back on. Because even if I buy another machine, worst case, shit hits the fan, I could sell one of my machines. It's a great asset that retains its value. So I made this money, and now I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Well, Haas isn't selling any machines. They send out an email. Hey, you can buy this VF or this ST, or no, they had a sale on, at the time, it was a ST15Y, which that was, I always wanted a small lathe with live tool and didn't really understand half of it. But I was like, man, that's what I want to do. This thing's on sale. And I look at it, and believe it or not, the number one kicker why I didn't buy it was because it didn't have a BMT turret on it. And I was like, I don't want to sit here and be dialing in excessively tool holders all day when I change inserts and crap like that. I was like, that's not what I want to do. I'm spoiled because all my machines have probes in them and tool setters. So I was like, all right, well, they're like, oh, you can get an ST20. Okay, well, what's the best deal you could do on that? So they gave me a pretty good deal. I signed I signed the loan on like a Thursday, right? And then when we come, here comes like Monday morning. I get a I get an email. I get an email from them again. They're like, "Hey, we have 4 or 5 of these ST30Ys on sale." And I do the math. I'm like, "Yo, after I put all the options on this thing, the XT30 costs like $400 less with identical options." So I called my sales guy back. I was like, "Hey man," I was like, "What's up with this? I just signed a loan on this thing on Thursday, and now Monday you guys have a new promo. The machine was 32% off."
Oh,
So I was like, "They're like, oh, we can tear up the loan and just sell you that one." I was like, "Send me the print. How much bigger is this?" So I had already scheduled to like shift stuff around in the shop and just slide. The last bench was going to get slid down like 18 inches. So after they sent me the layout on it, and this is with a bar feeder, everything, because I had ordered the ST20 with the bar feeder, live tooling, everything but a sub. Because when I really thought about it, most of the stuff I had in mind, I didn't really need a sub. Plus, their sub is not a true sub; it's like a finisher. So
right.
I was like, I don't really need that. I was like, I'd rather just build a fixture and just stack a bunch of parts and throw it in one of my 2 mills. So they ended up redoing it. I get the ST30. Boom. I've always wanted a lathe, and I always said I would only buy a lathe if it was bar fed and live tool. So now I have a lathe, and it's a much bigger lathe than what I thought I would ever be able to afford. But COVID discount,
Right.
right? Well, guess what? Every time something good's happened, expect something bad. This wasn't all bad, but I'm here cleaning the shop out like a week and a half later. Mind you, the machine's shipping fast because it's in stock. That's part of the reason, nobody was buying machines.
Right. They're trying to get rid of it.
They're trying to get rid of them. So I end up breaking my foot with a Liz Frank fracture.
No.
Yeah. I'm here like my bay door had like a 2 and maybe like a 2 foot drop. It was like the height of my tailgate. Because I used to be able to back my truck up and drop the tailgate and just walk right into the bay. So I'm going in and out, jumping down and jumping up. This is something I've been doing for 2 years. Not an issue. I jumped down one of these times. My foot must have dragged on the edge of the dock. So it didn't come off right. And then when I landed funny on my foot and I break my foot. So now I'm standing here. You're in shock. Adrenaline's pumping. So you don't really feel all the pain just yet. And I'm looking at my foot. I pull my shoe off and I could see my foot is only way to put it is just it's fucked up.
Oh.
So I'm like, all right, because the whole top of my foot is like swollen. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I was like, all right, well, I was like, typical me. I was like, well, let's do it. I closed my tailgate real quick because the truck was right there. I like hop back up into the bay, drag the roll up door down, lock it. I'm hopping on my left foot, and I'm right-handed, right foot as well. So I'm hopping around the shop, grabbing my crap, lock up the shop, hop down the stairs into the parking lot, hop into my truck, manage to drive myself to the ER. Right? I get there. Now the parking spot, I get out the truck and I'm like, damn, that's so far away to the entrance to the ER. And I'm like, crap. So I take a little break for like a couple minutes because I know just how tired I was just hopping around the shop and hopping to the truck on my off foot. So I'm like, crap. So I get in the truck, so now I close it and I legit hop all the way over there, somehow keeping my balance on my off foot this entire way, get into the ER. They finally put me in a wheelchair, and I called my wife. And mind you, I didn't even drive to the closest hospital. I drove to the closest hospital to my house. That way, when it was time to go home, I only had to drive like 3 minutes.
Right.
Right. So, because there's a hospital that's legitimately like a mile and a half away from the shop. I was like, nah, I'm not going there. I'm going to the other one because that one's closer to home. So I called my wife, and so I was like, hey, I need you to bring me the emergency card. I'm over here at like the Advent Hospital. Same parent company she works for. They own like half the hospitals in the area. So she's like, what did you do? I was like, she always asks me because I'll come home with like a scar, like a long cut, and just wounds because you get battle scars working on cars and working in a shop.
Oh yeah.
And so her question is, "What did you do?" I was like, "It's pretty bad. I can't tell you, but it's pretty bad." So she comes over there. She's about to go to work, so she's dressed now because she's working the night shift. So she comes, hands me the insurance card. I'm sitting in this wheelchair, and she like looks at my foot and she just like shakes my head. And she's like, "Are you good?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm good." And she's like, "All right, I'll talk to you later." And she leaves and goes to work. But this is just our relationship. She knows that. Listen, I've just always find a way. I deal with whatever it is. I was like, "Yo, I'll let you know later what they tell me." So they do all the X-rays and they have the consult. The guy tells me, he's like, "Listen, man, this is about an 8 to 9 month injury for recovery." I was like, "What?" I was like, "You're kidding me, right?" He's like,
Oh,
"No, you're going to need surgery." I was like, "So what happens if those that don't know Liz Frank, the bones didn't actually crack. What they did was they shifted off of the joints. So all three of my three longest toes, those bones that or the joints at the very top where you have all those small bones in your foot, they all broke free and shifted over."
yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah. So mind you, this is the first time I've ever broken anything in my life. So I was like, "Well, do it. You got to do it big." Now I can. I was like, I have the only injury that wide receivers and soccer players get, and I managed to do that at my shop.
Right, jumping off the dock, like
Jumping off the dock, not full like trailer height. This is like a low boy height. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So now I'm like pissed because I'm like, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna work? I just ordered this machine. I got all of this crap. I was like, you want to know what? I was like, one thing at a time. Just figure it out later. Whatever. Surgery is as soon as the swelling goes down. First, they're telling me, "Oh, well, surgeries are for like, I think like non-emergent surgeries." So they're like trying to classify my surgery into like a boob job, like cosmetic. I was like, "Dude, my foot is broken. This isn't
right.
something you could tell me to wait for later." I was like, so they finally clear it. And as soon as the swelling goes down, and I swear it goes down. It was actually quick surgery. It was in and out. I went home the same day. And then the thing is with me, guys are like, "Oh, well, man, it hurt." I was like, "Yeah, but I've always had a strong pain threshold my entire life." So they were like, "Oh, do you want to do like morphine or this?" I was like, "No, no, 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 no." I said, "You don't have anything else for this surgery?" They're like, "Well, we have liquid Tylenol and liquid Aleve." I was like, "I'll do that." I was like, "I don't need anything else in my body. I'm not super healthy, but I was like, dude, I've seen enough people that have been cracked out on stuff. I don't need any issues moving forward." I was like, "I've dealt with this for the last week, just taking Advil and Tylenol." I was like, "I'll do the surgery if you say whatever." So obviously I have pain, put me on crutches. They're like, "Come in a week, check your foot out. We'll x-ray it, make sure everything's good." So I'm on crutches. So, or no, it wasn't even a week. I think it was like surgery was on a Friday. I think my follow up was on the Tuesday with the surgeon. And then he's like, "Oh, okay, well, now we can give you your crutches and do this." I was like, "So I get crutches?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You cannot walk on this." He's like, "In like another week or two, we'll check you again and we'll put you in a boot." But he's like, "You cannot walk in the boot. It's just so that you have protection and a little bit of mobility if you're like moving around the house." So I'm hopping around this damn apartment on one foot doing all of this foolishness, half the time because I don't want to use the crutches in the apartment. It's more convenient just to hop, even though it tires me out. So I was like, "All right." So I'm like, "All right." So like maybe so I go back to work right after the follow up. And he's like, "Yo, do you have somebody to drive you?" He's like, "No." He's like, legally in the state of Florida, you're not supposed to drive if you have anything on your foot." I was like, "I'll be okay." So I hop in my truck and I go to work. So I can only do stuff on the computer. I'm not in the back. And then I order a knee scooter. So I'm rolling around on this knee scooter. Mind you, my shop now is packed. So I can barely move around because it's 1,400 square feet, but I got a VF2, a VF4, and at this point, the lathe had showed up.
Oh my god.
So this is like, so I'm like, damn, I can barely move in here. So the most difficult part of this whole thing was actually my packing station was at the back of the shop. And I had to pack back there and then get boxes to the front of the shop. So when you're like barely navigating through this little alleyway of machines and shelves and racking and parts stacked up, it's like it's kind of difficult. But I
Right.
managed to go through it. A week later, they put me in a walking boot. From the day they put me in the walking boot, I was in there walking, back to hustling. And everybody, every time I went for a checkup, like every 2, 3 weeks, they were like, "Man, are you walking on this?" I'm like, "Yeah." But you know, you're not supposed to walk on it. I was like, "Listen, I told you from the beginning, your whole theory on whatever was going to happen was not going to happen." I was
Yeah.
like, "I have to run a business, you know?" And so they're like, "Man, for it's you're healing amazingly and very quickly, but we don't understand because you're still walking on it." I was like, "I don't know. I've been a quick healer and I have a high threshold for pain." I was like, "It is what it is." So I was in the boot for I think maybe 2 months, and then I was back to walking regular. But it legitimately took closer to like 9 to 10 months until I felt comfortable. Like walking in a straight line on flat pavement, it was fine. But if I were like, I would go to walk my dogs and, you know, I'm walking up or down an incline in the grass. And as soon as the angle or the pitch changes on my ankle, it would hurt. It felt sometimes like it would want to buckle.
Oh,
So I'm like, it's like I basically didn't use my foot for 2 months fully because even when I'm in the boot, the majority of the weight is still on my left leg.
right.
You know, you're standing, you're leaning and gravitating towards your left leg. Well, guess what? I have another back to back stellar month. July is great. August is great. I get another email from Haas. So they're like, "Hey, we have VF4 SS's 28% off, three of them ready to go." Mind you, the Lade was fully loaded with every viable option. This VF4 SS is fully loaded with every viable option because that's how they were doing them to get the most value out of the purchase, even though they were discounting them. So I was like, "You want to know what? I have the money. Screw it. I'll buy it." So now I'm in 1,400 square feet, a '04 VF4, a 15 VF2, a 2020 ST30Y with a bar feeder, and now a VF4 SS. All so I've just purchased in the last less than a year, I purchased a used machine and two brand new ones. So, and here's the best part, which now I'm like, okay, well, guess what? When I offloaded the machine, I wanted more room at the back of the shop. So I put the lathe at the front of the shop by the roll up door.
Oh,
So now I have
no.
to call the rigger. We became pretty good friends, the main guy, like the foreman.
Hmm.
So actually, I had him do some stuff around Nick's shop when he was getting his UMC in. Like he moved his old machines out for him. So I was like, "Dude, I need you to come in here and move this lathe to like slide it straight down, and then so I have room for this VF4." That and the only reason I did it, I had absolutely no plans of buying another machine, you know. But the deal was so good, and I had the money at the time for the down payments, and more importantly, I had enough revenue that even if things got cut 50% in, I would have less play money, but I had enough to cover the payments. And that's how I kind of look at most of my decisions. Even though I spend a bunch of money, but I was like, "You want to know what? Screw it, because what's the worst that's going to happen? The world's going to end. Half of the people on the planet thinks the world's going to end right now because we're like 4 months into COVID." But I
Right.
was like, "You want to know what? Go big or go home." I was like, "I'm either going to make something out of this situation or staying at home hiding isn't going to do anything for me. And right now, it's trending this way. I'm going to spend the money." So I get all of these things in there. So now the shop is an absolute disaster. It's unworkable because of the lack of space. Because you obviously know space. 1,400 square feet with four full size machines is
That's nuts. I don't even know how you fit them all.
I couldn't walk in there. I had to rent like a external garage by my apartment and shove like a bunch of inventory in my storage shelves, took them out of the shop and put them at home because there was no room in the shop, you know? But I had already committed to doing all of this. And I was like, "All right, well, I'm rolling up on my third year of the lease. I got plenty of equipment. I need to look for a bigger place." So I start looking for a place towards uh, the end of the year. And I'm like, "All right, well, So same thing again. 2 years up, my wife's contract. We're like, hey, if you could find a better job, because her goal was she wanted to get to a certain level, either in a surgical center at the hospital or in the ICU. I was like, listen, try to get up to the ICU or at least one level above where you are, which is one level before the ICU unit. If they won't, apply and get a job someplace else. Because you know how it is. Once someone's comfortable with you in a position, they don't want to really replace you because then they have to train somebody else. They'd rather keep you where you are and hire somebody completely different for the next level up. So
Yeah.
I was like, no, we don't have time to play. I was like, you're going to get a job. We're all good. I was like, it's not a shortage. And it just so happened like a month before the third year of or actually a month before the lease at the apartment was up, which was our second year, she got hired at a surgical center, but this is down in Lakeland. So from where we are, this is close to an hour and a half away. I'm like, all right. I was like, you want to know what? She's like, but to take the job, they want me to live within 30 minutes of the hospital because we have to do on-call shifts. So I was like, well, I guess we're moving again, but we're still in Central Florida, so I don't really care. So I was like, all right, well, my lease at the shop isn't up for another year because I signed a 3 year. I was like, I guess I have to commute. Oh my God. That stretch of I-4, I have to pass all three major theme parks. So I have
Oh,
to pass
jeez.
Universal, Disney, and SeaWorld on I-4, which the traffic with the tourists is ridiculous. So I have to leave my house super early in the morning, pretty much on the days where I have to take the kids to the bus stop or whatever. I'm on the road on those days, like 7:45. It's still trafficy, but I get there in like just under an hour. If I try to leave during traffic, it's like an hour and a half, unless
Oh,
I take the toll road, which costs me probably like $8 to avoid all of that, which I would take on Fridays and Saturdays specifically so I could avoid all the tourists that were in town. So, and then to go home, it's the same thing. It's an hour drive back home. But I did that for the remainder of my lease. And I would tell her all the time, I was like, yo, you're lucky I love you this much because this this traffic is driving me nuts. Right.
oh
So
yeah.
everything works out. I took another COVID deal because obviously there were no cars. Everybody needs trucks. I ended up getting a better truck, traded in, got more value for the truck that I had bought 2 years before because these guys wanted my truck for such a reason that they overpaid for the truck. And then I got a newer truck that was less mileage because, mind you, now while I was doing this commute, we aren't being hit with the gas prices we have now. What I was doing this commute, I was spending $700 a month in fuel in my truck.
Oh man.
So for a year, I spent, you know, a lot of money, call it like $9,000 in fuel costs, commuted plus tolls. So as soon as I found a place, it was a brand new building that's being built, the building that I'm in now. It's just under 6,000 square feet. It's got 3 offices, 2 bathrooms, 24-foot ceilings, 3 roll-up doors in the back, 2 normal size, and one like massive one that you could put like a tractor trailer through or a mobile home. And that one has a ramp down to the ground. So,
Yeah, it's insane. Like that, I'm looking at pictures of it on your Instagram, and it looks so nice.
right. So, mind you, at this point, I finally, after my foot was broken, hired my first employee. So, to this point, I've done all of this myself. So, people don't understand it. It's a lot, and they don't understand. Like, they look at everything, look at the facility, look at the machines, and they think it's an entire team. I was like, no, man, you guys are so wrong. I was like, I did this shit myself for a long period of time. I was like, it's kind of crazy, but that's part of the reason I was able to grow and scale because I didn't have the responsibility of employees and payroll and stuff like that. So I was like, listen, I don't have anybody here. I'll just buy another machine. Because honestly, what happens is the way how I look at it is every time I buy a machine, it is an expense, but I'm actually buying back my time
Yeah.
because I can get more done with multiple machines, even though it costs me significantly more, but I get my free time back. I get my sanity back. My machines don't run a lot. My lathe has like 450 hours on it.
Oh wow.
It's it's over a year and a half, but every time I run it, I load it up with bar stock and I make like a year's worth of whatever product it is that I need of that one individual product. And having the larger space actually allows me to keep more of that. With the smaller space, I had nowhere to put any of this stuff. I couldn't run up my inventory and run larger batches of product to keep because I had nowhere to put it, even if I did. So I was constantly every day running the machines. Now with the new shop, I have so much more space. My machines actually run less because I just do a lot more when I'm actually running them. And then the rest of the time I'm packing boxes or dealing with customers or just doing other random stuff. But I mean, the shop, it's a lot more. It's probably, I mean, I don't know what rates are by you, but this shop is like $5,400 a month. I signed a 5-year lease with a 2-year option. So technically 7 years, my cost of this building is already locked in. So no matter what has been happening with the real estate market, with everybody being, screwed over with rent increases, I have 7 years, 5 guaranteed and 2 years if I want to stay, that my rates are secured. So that's one of the good things. It gives me a peace of mind. So I don't even have to worry about it at this point. And when I got here, like I said, it was a brand new building. So that's why you see some of the earlier pictures was me and my employee at the time, we polished the floors. Because I was like, I got quotes. I was like, yeah, I want something nice. I want to do something more for marketing for the business. Now that I have the space, set it up nice because I'm going to be here for minimum 5 years. So I was like, all right. So we polished the floors. Then I was like, man, I want to do something killer with the paint. So that's why you see I rented a scissor lift and I painted the entire shop by myself.
Yeah, I just saw that. I couldn't believe you did that.
So so I'm up here waving around on this scissor lift like 20 something feet in the air, trying not to look down in a spray suit, in like one of those painters jumpsuits, sweating my ass off up there. Cause I was like, dude, I was like, the whole time I'm like, man, this was a bad idea. This was a bad idea. But I'm like, just don't look down there. Just keep moving. Just keep moving. Like, what is it? Like Dora or whatever? Or Dory? Just keep moving.
Just keep
And
moving. Just
and
keep swimming.
yeah. So I got it. I got it done. When it was done, it's great. I love it. I enjoy coming in here. I put AC in here.
Best
Uh,
decision.
Mind you, here's the thing. The AC was really expensive and I was hesitant, but I've had AC for so long that I was like, I can't do without it. Fortunately, since the building was still being done, I had like 4 months. I actually signed this lease like right around the time, or no, I signed the lease like in May. I didn't move in until September. So I had time. And they were like, listen, you have time. The building's still being built. The owner of the property, he's actually the largest developer in the area. They own like 3 million square feet of commercial property within the city limits. So he was like, listen, work with my AC guys. They'll get it taken care of. They'll bill you out incrementally. So I was like, all right, that gives me time. That just means I have less money each month because I'm paying for this air conditioning. It was like $22,000. It's a lot. And guys say, oh, well, you spend a lot for a building you don't own. I was like, well, I'm in here for 5 years. If you break it down on a yearly or multiple or monthly cost, it's well worth it. Because what you have to remember is if you're not working in this Florida heat, you don't understand the Florida heat. I was like, I'm not doing that. So
Yeah. No,
I,
we put an AC, just a mini split last year, and it's the best thing I think
yeah,
we've ever done for the shop.
yeah. And I would never go back. But here's how I approach things. Again, like I said, I look at things on a different angles, different purview. My old space was $1,300 a month or 1,200. This is about call it $4,000 more. But because of the additional space, I was able to get in a nice used bandsaw. My cut fees through Alro was $700-800 a month just in cut fees for material.
Right.
My anodizing costs, which I used to anodize before I came to Central Florida because I didn't have as much space and I found a halfway decent local guy, which the thing is, my anodizing cost is about $2,500 to $3,000. I have enough space. I started setting my anodizing station back up. So that goes back into my pocket. My cut fees go back into my pocket.
That's
So,
awesome.
so just by having a larger space, yes, it costs more, but I can eliminate a lot of those outside costs and just bring it back in. So this place is barely costing me very much more than what my smaller space was, but I have a lot more area to work with. I'm a lot more comfortable. And now I can actually go about trying to bring people in because I'm on 4 machines. Well, actually, when I moved down here to the larger place, I sold my original VF2. I sold my baby.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mind you, 5 years, the thing only had uh 8,200 hours.
Oh, wow.
Oh, no, no, no. I'm sorry. I am completely incorrect. 5 years, the thing had like 2,800 cut hours on the spindle. And I built this business on that. And that's what I
That's
tell guys. It's
awesome.
like I work on a lot of efficiency and just trying to maximize when it is running. I get as many parts out of it as possible. And I don't do a lot of small parts because I'm by myself. So if you're doing small parts, you got to tend the machine more often. It's if like for you and Brad, the brothers are super fast. You guys get stuff done, but you guys aren't doing the volume because correct me or am I wrong? Because you guys do primarily lower quantity run for prototypes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We
Yeah,
completely don't use the brothers for what they're intended for. We use them as like a less expensive, higher accuracy machine rather than like balls to the wall production.
correct. So it's like that's how I do it. I pick a product that I can earn more revenue per spindle hour than something else. If I don't, I can make a $30 product, but if I make a $30 product, I got to make a couple hundred of them every run, which means I'm not even able to walk away from the machine. It, I have other things to do. You know, when I get guys in here, I could circle back. But one of the new things, which some people might see it, some people don't, because I haven't really posted a lot on it because I'm actually working on a YouTube video, is I just got a brand new UMC 750 SS.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. That one is loaded as well. I got a good deal, not through Haas, my salesman, since this is, I think, like my fourth machine with him. He gave me a pretty good deal on it. And I've always wanted a 5-axis. I always said I wanted, after my first mill, I was like, I want a live tool and lathe. And eventually I want a 5-axis. Now I have a bunch of products planned for it, like intake manifolds, larger items, and just some modular scaling where I could do like mini pallets and tombstones for some of the more complex parts so I can get more of them done at a time. But hopefully I can get somebody in here by the end of the summer. I'm really looking for a media guy so that I could keep some of that stuff going and hopefully get somebody else in here. But still, 4 machines, including a brand new 5-axis, and I'm still alone inside almost 6,000 square feet in air conditioning. It's kind of like a big place for me just to play around and just do whatever I want to do, whenever I want to do it.
I was gonna say that doesn't sound too bad.
Nah.
Well, so actually, you brought up one of our first questions. Interestingly enough, all the questions this week are from prior guests. And Nick from P3D asked, "How's the new shop working out?" So, how are you liking it now that you're all moved in?
I love it, man, but it'll probably still be towards the end of the year before I'm like 100% set up. Like right now, I'm probably like 70, 80% of all my ideas and my efficiencies. You know, it's kind of when you get in here because I have to get back to work. It's like get everything in place, get it as best as you can, work on the organization little by little, and go from there. But I love it, man. The best part is I have 3 ways to get here from the new house that we rented. My wife works less than 10 minutes away. She's one exit over in Lakeland at the hospital that she works at now. And I'm only 20 minutes away from my house.
Oh, that's
No,
killer.
and it's the opposite direction of Orlando. So I don't have to drive through any of the tourist traffic.
That's great.
So it's just one of those things. Like I said, peace of mind, and it's so much less stress. I go 2 weeks without filling up my truck now because I'm so close. So even though gas prices are through the roof, I'm not paying $700 a month in fuel, and that was before $4 and change for gas.
Right. Yeah. Let's see. Alex Kern asked, he's got an aluminum job coming up. What's your go-to square and ball end mills, 3/8 and under?
Mm, I will honestly say I use a lot of GW Schultz for my
Yeah, yeah.
aluminum.
Because they're out
Uh,
there too, aren't they
yeah,
in Florida?
they're like 45 minutes away. Tomas has always been really helpful with me, even when I only had one machine and I didn't know what I was doing which he's been promoted up in the company now, but they've always been a great company. They stand behind their product. When they've had problems, they did have some problems that we worked through, and it took them a few months, and I circled back. And it was just because some engineer changed the brand of grinding wheel because I was like, listen, this thing's not working like how it used to. I've used these things for 3 years. But he actually went and figured it out. Whereas most tooling guys were like, oh no, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's not his job. He doesn't work in the grinding room. But he valued my knowledge and my input because I've always used your tools. I've always like, you know, I've always pushed it to other people because it's a great tool. They're somewhat local to me. They're sold by a bunch of companies. I mean, their illuminators is pretty much what everybody else has started trying to do now. And then they've started buying up some other companies. Like I believe they bought Benchmark.
Yeah.
Uh,
They bought a ton of
ton of
companies.
companies. They've been
Yeah.
buying up companies. So that's part of
Like
the
them
reason.
and Harvey, it's like
Yeah.
they're in a race with each other on how many tooling companies they can buy.
Yeah, but it's kind of weird because like Schultz was never like super huge. And then all of a sudden they started buying these smaller companies. And I talked to him, he's like, listen, it's less expensive for us to just acquire a company that does like drill reamer combos than it is for us to buy the equipment and figure out how to do it on our own.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I think that that's why Harvey's doing that too. Is
Yeah.
it's much easier to bring a brand into the fold than it is to develop a process. But it is really interesting to see both of them kind of just scoop up any company that's willing to sell. It seems like.
Yeah, but to the other side of the thing, I don't have 100% brand loyalty when it comes to stuff. Some guys use the same tools all the time. I buy everybody's tools, no matter the cost, because I really want to. That's how I've learned. I've learned from trial and error and experience and figure out what my machine's like. Because, obviously, my machine versus a brother versus an Akuma, everything has different characteristics. So I try a bunch of different stuff. And I've used, Swift Car, Harvey, Benchmark, Schultz, Niagara, Helical. And there's certain things that I like and certain things I won't off of anyone. If someone called me right now and say, hey, we want to try it, we have this new tool, but it's this, all right, I'll buy it. Because if it's trash, it's trash. Like a
Right.
lot of guys, like for me with my lathe, it cost me a bunch of money to figure out that I do not like sanding. If you're running if honestly, I feel if you're running a lathe that you're spraying oil in the thing all day, it works great. I've tried it on a lot of the harder metals and stainless and stuff. For the few components that I do that are out of hardened metals, titanium or 316, and I was getting way better life out of its car and Kyocera. And I have a drawer that's just full of Sandvik stuff I pulled out of this, probably about like $3,000 to $4,000. Part off blade holders, like stuff that just didn't perform as well as something else. A lot of people are kind of hesitant to once they spend money, they want to stick it out. I was like, listen, man, a lot of stuff, it's basically I'm paying just like some people pay to go to college. It's like cost of owning your own business. You're going to lose money if your only goal is to lose less money than than what you than the other guy.
Yeah.
But if you're not willing to spend money to get more efficient, I was like, that's how I produce the products I can as quickly as I can, is because I'm willing to invest in things that make me more efficient. That's all I care about.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I think I've always found it really funny that, like, mill guys, especially if you're cutting mostly aluminum, like, yeah, we like brands, or we might have a few brands that we really don't like, but like, nobody's really all that hot about anything. But man, some lathe guys you talk to, like, they will die for their lathe company or, tooling company of choice. I've always found it
Yeah.
really funny.
Yeah, it definitely is because I bought a bunch. You open my lathe box. I have Iskar, Kyocera, Sandvik, Walter. Dude, I just buy if it works, I keep buying it. And then if someone else says that they have something that'll work better, I was like, hey, send me a sample. And if they don't want to send a sample, I just still buy it anyway. If it's junk, I throw it in the drawer. I was like, you
Right.
know,
Yeah, definitely. So the last question we got from two sides, Joe from Cobra Frame Building and Brian from CAD Models, both wanted to talk about product development and how you get ideas for your new products.
yeah. Well, Brian's helped me a lot because Brian's got the UMC. So I actually picked his brain a lot when I was doing this purchase. So he's a really good guy. I still talk to him randomly on IG. And Joe from Cobra, I talk to Joe all the freaking time. We'll video chat and stuff. But I think what it is I kind of just I try to solve a problem, and my approach is some guys try to solve a problem that they're the only people that have that, or the only person that has that problem. And then they swear to God it's the best thing since sliced bread. And then they wonder why the product doesn't sell. You know, I
Right.
I try to solve a problem that's very simple, not overly complicated, that I say to myself, hey, I think that this could work. And then I kind of do a lot of background, like mental calculations, like, hey, how many of these do I think I could sell a month? How many people own this type of engine or this application? And I can and that's what gauges whether or not I want to bring that product to market, because I have plenty of stuff that I've designed or modeled. I probably have well over 100 models that I've done that I've never produced because I didn't have the time. And part of me purchasing more equipment is so that I can get to those things. Like I could run for the next 2 years and drop, 5 new products every month. I have that much stuff on the back burner because in my free time, when I wasn't as busy, I was always modeling something. But the main thing is I try to find something. It doesn't have to be overly complicated, because if it's overly complicated, I got to go grab one of my mechanical engineer buddies to come in and back me up on most of it. But if it's something simple, like it's like, hey man, but it's also because of the fabrication background. Most of that stuff is solving a problem or trying to accomplish a goal. I just try to like really evaluate to see whether or not it's a marketable product. One, how much time do I have to spend to market it? That is going to be based on, is there something similar? And is it a really super niche group that is going to require like a partnership or something else, because that's not my demographic. That's part of the reason I'm trying to expand. Like, I'll give you an example. You've seen, I don't know his name, but Frontline Fab.
Yeah.
All right. He had those diff covers for the GTR. He had those things for well over a year before Tony Paulo decided to start using them and selling them. Great product, but certain markets, like me trying to sell something to a Lamborghini market or GTR market, most of it's a smaller community. It's not as high a volume of
Right. When you have
owners.
to like break into that market, like you're an
Correct.
unknown name and nobody's going to,
Correct.
drop
So
something from an unknown name on their $200,000 plus car.
correct. So in those types, sometimes you have to do like what he did, where you associate yourself with a known name to get your product out there. That's part of my evaluation on product development. If it's going to be too difficult to break into that market, I will shelf it. It's not worth it. If I have, in 2-3 years from now, if I have enough of a team that other people can go ahead and do things for me like that, then hey, you're getting paid a salary. That's your job to sit around and market all day.
Right.
If in my case, if I have to wear the hat of photographer, photo editor, I deal with my own website. I do all the editing the only thing I don't do right now is video editing. I finally found somebody to outsource that stuff to. But every other aspect of my business, I have to currently do on my own. So I tend to choose a product that's easier to market, still solves a problem. It'll sell itself without a lot of back end costs, as far as how much do I have to spend to advertise this online or on banners or on Instagram ads or Facebook ads. It's like it has to be cost effective. So a lot of that goes in line with what it is. Like Joe's great because Joe, yes, it's a niche market on bike building, but it's very direct. It's very direct because he's building tools that frame builders need. So if you're his experience, because he did it, he's not just a guy that's looking from the outside in saying, hey, I think I should make this for these guys. It's like me building cars for years and knowing what it takes to go faster or be more reliable. I have an insight that a regular guy that just sits at a computer doesn't have. Joe has that insight. He built bikes before. So
Right.
most of the stuff he's making is stuff that he wish he had back then, that he knows that other people would genuinely need.
Definitely. So to that point, I see in a few of your newer pictures that you've got a Mark IV Supra and an R34. Are those development cars for you, or
Yeah, the
just
Supra.
fun? Or
No, no, no. The Supra is my personal development car. It's about 90% complete, but it's actually going to be a project over the year of going through and changing different things on it. To on the YouTube channel, I decided that this year with the new shop and everything, I should have a lift installed in here back there where the cars are pretty soon. I'm going to use them for marketing. The R34 is actually a really good friend of mine. One of the few people that can still get talk me into touching his car because he pretty much gives me free reign. He lets me do whatever I want. So that thing is going to get as many parts as what my car does. Even though I already have a lot of the Super and Jay Z parts, I'm trying to take it to a whole nother level, especially with the 5 axis being here. But you guys stay tuned. You're going to see for probably for the next, at least until the end of the year, those two cars are going to get a lot of product and development and a lot of content on them.
okay, so are you doing a lot of RB development then?
Yeah, I've wanted to get into the RB stuff for a while. So the the RB, it's one of those things, man. It's like outside of Australia, there's very little people that do very much here in the States. If you have an RB, you're buying parts that are coming from outside the country. So I
Right.
feel that that's an untapped market that honestly has more growth potential than what I've gotten so far with the Jay Z. And the Jay Z has been really great for me.
Yeah. Well, I know Brad had considered an RB swap into his 260Z, and one of the reasons he steered away from it was that reason. He was like, I can't really get parts. He's like, like the M104 he's ended up going with. He's like, I can go to any AutoZone and get parts for this. He's like, I can't do that with an RB.
Yep, that's one of the reasons. I was like, RB, there's a lot. I got a lot planned.
Awesome.
I'm going to start with pretty much everything I have already developed for the Jay Z, and pretty much just transplant those ideas and concepts over to the RB, and then go from there. But one other thing, which it's a year overdue, I have one more machine coming.
You do? Well, that brings us to shop news and new things. So what else can you share what else is coming?
Yeah, it's honestly not even new. It's just overdue. I ordered this thing last May.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, of course, it's another Haas. Haas, they've been good to me. I don't have any problems with them. My HFO is 30 minutes away. My salesmen like me. The owners over there like me. I just, but they decided to put a full size pallet pool on the VF2.
Oh, cool.
That's why I sold my original VF2. I sold that. It just took the money and gave it to them as a down payment. But so, but the main thing is it's a VF2 SS YT. Actually, it's the same machine your buddy just got in a couple of days ago from Brick Tactical, because he
Oh,
actually
Peyton,
talked to
yeah.
me. Yeah, Peyton. He talked to me about it because he knew that I had ordered it. But same machine, but the pallet pool. The reason I got it is because I remembered how much money the VF2 made me and for what it costs. But I remembered certain things that I didn't like. Chip management sucked. So this one has the triple auger. My UMC, which a lot of guys complain about the chips, I have the upgraded auger, the one with the self cleaning mechanism on it. So like I said, I've learned over the years working alone, you don't want to deal with certain things. If all that's going to change is my monthly payment, but I get my time, I'm going to spend the money on the option and just walk away. But this thing on the YT, the pallets are 30 by 18 and a half.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
so
That's like full
the
table then almost.
exactly. That's why I gave them the money immediately. But they finished it and they posted it on their IG page like 2.5, almost 3 months ago, and they're still working out the software. Fortunately, I'm one of those more patient customers, which I don't really care. I was like, as long as it shows up and it works, I was like, I have plenty of other machines. I'm not counting on it being here. I was hoping it was originally supposed to show up the same time as the UMC so I could do one inclusive video. That's part of the reason I didn't do the video on the UMC yet. I've been giving them time to hopefully get it here. But I think that is going to be by far my most productive machine out of all of them, just because the fact is I live 20 minutes away. On a Saturday and a Sunday, I can come in the morning, load all 4 pallets, go home, come back in the evening, load them all again. And now every night when I go home, I can load 4 pallets. So that machine should be pretty much the workhorse.
That's awesome. Well, congrats. I'm looking forward to seeing that work. I just pulled up the page on Haas's website because I didn't even know they had a 4 pallet pool or 3 pallet pool, however you want to
I think
describe it.
last time I checked, I think they pulled it down, or I wasn't looking properly, but it's on the site, and I mean, for what they charge, it's like $45,000. You can't beat it.
Yeah, that's pretty epic. I'm really
Yeah,
looking forward to seeing how that all works out because that it's a very interesting layout too. I don't think I've seen a vertical pallet pool like that.
yeah. That's why like I said, man, it's the original VF2. It was a workhorse. Its time had come, unfortunately, but this one has everything that all my newer machines, because that machine for building a business, it wasn't anything special. It was 8,100 RPMs and basically a chip auger. I did add a fourth axis to it, but for what I spent and what I sold it for at the end, it was a no brainer. I mean, best money I ever spent at that point. And I'm hoping that this one, as long as it's reliable, which I don't doubt the machine, I know that there's going to be some foolishness I have to deal with as far as the integration with the palette changer. But, hopefully we get that wrapped up within like 3 to 6 months. And after that, I'm on to making money and turning my back on it.
That's awesome. So, what other options did you get? 15K spindle or
I leave on aluminum, honestly, even with the 15K, I just leave the standard SS. All my SS machines are 12K.
okay?
They all have HSM. This one has the triple auger on it, so I don't have to worry about chips backing up in there,
Hmm.
because a lot of guys, when you go to full on automation or lights out, they forget coolant and chips. All my machines, my newer machines, they all have the auto refill, which guys have asked me like, oh, well, how does that work? It works. I don't think it works. I was like, listen, just adjust it, dial it in, just like, tuning or building a car. It's not going to work by you just turning it on. When I switched from Qualicam over to Hankstifer, all my settings change. One, not only did my water pressure, which you have to have a flow meter to input the information in my old shop, I was at like 1.1 gallons an hour or a minute. And in my new shop, I'm at 3.4 gallons an hour. And the viscosity between the two coolants is completely different.
Oh
So if
yeah,
you don't put all of that stuff in, guys just put it in, oh, well, my bricks is too high. Well, it has a high low percentage that you can use as a trim. So adjust the trim to get it to your target. I was like, it's not that hard. But for what it costs, the fact that I don't have to worry about flooding my shop anymore because I left a pipe on over a 5 gallon bucket, which has happened plenty of times. I mean, for what they charge, it's like $1,100. But I also have a really nice mixer that I got from Hankstipper for my old VF4. That one just stays on the drum. I open it up and it just fills that. But all the other machines, they have the coolant refill. So I just keep the concentrate, the 5 gallon reservoir top, and that's it. And I put the 95 gallon coolant tanks on them on the UMC and the pallet changer, because my VF4 SS, you run it long enough, you have almost no coolant in the tank because most of it is pooling inside the enclosure, waiting to drain through your chips. So
right.
I was like, all right, well, I bought those. You got auger, obviously probe. I can't run a machine without a probe ever in my life, because I've only known the probing system from the very beginning. So trying to think what else, but yeah, because for aluminum, yeah, you could go 15K, but realistically, dude, it's like 12 to 15. The price that you're gonna spend on an SS. If you're buying an SS, you're getting certain features standard, including 12K. If you have a non-SS, then yes, I would probably say skip the 12 and go to a 15, because you're starting at a 10. So your price increment, when you price it out on a Haas's site, it's in your favor to get a 15. But if you already have an SS, going from 12 to 15, I mean, realistically, half of the battle is your tooling. You get good tooling, you're gonna get the finishes and the performance that you want. So outside
Right.
of it's fun, which I've run a couple of my friends' machines that had 15, which that was getting back to Adam. I forgot to go back, but I ended up reconnecting with Adam, which was a guy that was making my parts that were Precita.
Hmm.
Like the first year in my shop when I got my VF2, I found him on like Facebook Marketplace. He was closing up his stuff, and I ended up finding out it was the same guy we talked, and he actually let me, or he asked me if he could put one of his machines in my shop because he was closing up. He was selling one, and it was a DM2, and it was a 15K spindle. And I let him stay in the shop for a year, and he would come by, run the machine, make parts for whatever jobs here and there. But the main thing is having him there on site for a year put me probably about 10 years ahead of schedule in my machining experience because the guy is a guru with multi-axis programming, fixturing, and just production style machining. So he taught me a lot. So I went from zero to hero in like the first 2 years of me having my first mill.
That's
But it's
awesome.
just, and guys, and some of my friends would say, "Oh, well, how come you're not charging him rent?" I was like, "Dude, it's not worth it. I was going to do this regardless whether or not I charge a guy for using a little bit of space." I was like, when I'm picking his brain and getting that knowledge, I was like, you can't buy that.
Definitely. Yeah, that's well worth the price of a few square feet.
Yeah, which I had plenty of space then because I only had one machine in there, but it was worth it.
That is really cool. Yeah, and I think that with from what you've said, like with how little you actually run your machines, the 3,000 RPM difference is not going to be a big deal. You know, if you're running balls to the wall all day, every day, I certainly understand somebody choosing the 15K over the 12K. But yeah, I think you're doing the right choice for your style of shop.
Yeah, because like I said, the additional cost that it would be for me to spend on the spindle, I can throw on some of the other user options that will save me time in the shop. And fundamentally, when I get more people in here, I don't want to be having my guys wasting their time doing like tedious tasks.
Right.
You know, oh,
Yeah,
we
for
need to
sure.
top off coolant. I don't need you topping off coolant. Let the machine measure the usage and top off the coolant. I need you keeping the products going and getting them on the shelf, getting them deburr, whatever it is, the other aspects of the business, because there's a lot of stuff as a manufacturer that's essentially direct to market. I do have wholesale guys, but my sales are majority directly to the customer. It's like we got a lot of stuff to do. We got boxes to box every day. You know, there's a lot of hats to be worn. I don't really have a target. My goal every day is just like, just get shit done. Have your priorities, and pretty much every day I'm like, I want to get this, and this done. Anything else above that is a bonus, and that's how I target every day because you don't really know what'll happen. I might have a fire I got to put out, or something, or a delivery that's missed, or something else that puts me completely off course. I can't assign that to anyone else just yet. So, some guys will have a full task list and just go off their checklist every day. I was like, I can't run that way. There's way too many variables that can pop up throughout the day.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, Tony, that brings me to the last question I ask every guest every time, which is, what did you research this week?
Man,
And
what I'm researching and still researching is going back through all of my Power Mill training because that's the software I'm running for the UMC. So I
oh,
did,
interesting. Okay.
yeah. So I did the training probably about like 2.5 months ago. The machine was delayed slightly. Wasn't that bad because I ordered it the end of December and it still showed up maybe like a month and a half ago. But the thing is other stuff gets in the way. You get kind of sidetracked. So I'm circling back. It took me like 2 weeks just to load the carousel because I put a 50 tool holder carousel on it and I had like 60 tools ready to go in the thing. So between entering all the tooling data, the holder data, programming all of that into the cam, is like, all right, well, fortunately, when I did the training, they let me record all the sessions, the basic and all the one-on-one. So I had a lot of hours that I've just been rewatching just to pick all that stuff back up because it's not software that I use on a daily basis. It's brand new software, but so that's what I've been doing like at night and in my free times in the evening before I go home is I try to watch at least 1 or 2 hours of that and just play with that. That way I can hopefully realistically next week I should be slinging chips inside that thing because it's been ready to go for about like 2 weeks.
That's great. I look forward to seeing your progress on that. What made you choose PowerMill over any other software out there?
I don't know. I guess I've always just leaned towards Autodesk products, but I I use PowerMill maybe about I had Power 2019 when I was trying to do some stuff with my fourth axis that I was trying to play with. But realistically, for what I want to do, which is obviously automotive, so I'm going to come with some fire intake manifold designs, and I'm not doing any basic designs. I need more complex things that I can machine and use in Fusion to program simultaneous fifth isn't going to happen except for because they're limited in toolpaths, whereas PowerMill will go to the full extent. Now, Mastercam also has the port in function. So
Hmm.
does PowerMill Ultimate. The primary difference is, honestly, I prefer PowerMill's interface over even the newer Mastercam. And more importantly, there is about an $8,000 difference in the price because
Oh
PowerMill
wow.
Ultimate is, which is their top tier, is still only like $10,000 before you talk them into a discount. Mastercam top tier with the port in function is about $18,000.
Wow. That's a big difference.
Yeah. So for what I need, I mean, Mastercam is great, but it's just I work with those who work with me, and as long as it'll get the job done, it's the same reason I keep buying Haas until they do me wrong or I'm just fed up or my needs change. What my machines are well suited for the products that I plan on developing and manufacturing. If I was in a different industry or needed super high tolerances, stuff like that, I would probably go a different route. But right now, I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied with the service. I'm satisfied with the results, and the product earns it. It does what it does. So there's realistically, I'm not closed minded to it because I'm like, dude, I've talked to the Kern guys, I talked to the Akuma guys. I love the product. I love higher end technology, and my goal is one day is like realistically, I might never buy a Kern, but I keep doing what I'm doing. I should be able to afford a Kern, and
Right.
being able
Right.
to afford something is that's what it is. I just want to be successful, make the money. If I decide to buy something, I want to buy that. I'm not going to buy anything for my business currently that I don't think is a best fit for where I currently am. If I change markets, because honestly, I don't know what I'll be doing when my lease is up. For all I know, the business might be for sale, or I might turn it over because by then I might have employees that are capable of running it, and then maybe I just open a home shop just to do something else and buy completely different machines. Because at that point, hey, I might buy a small 5 axis just so I can tinker around and do my projects.
Right. Yeah, definitely. That's great. I really look forward to seeing how Power Mill and the UMC and all that works out for you. I think that's going to be such a big growth point for the type of products that you can design.
Oh yeah, that was the main thing. Is like I didn't want to limit my design based on my programming ability, because it's like I look at some of the designs from the higher end stuff, even in aerospace. It's like a straight line is like I don't want air making a 90-degree turn. I don't want straight runners. If I can make curved runners that are angled up, but then you can't do that type of programming on Fusion. So it's like, yes, you can run a 5 axis on Fusion, but is it ideal for what I have in mind? No, it's not. It's not going to work. I knew it wasn't going to work from the very beginning. Unfortunately, I knew I was going to have to spend money on software for this.
I'm really looking forward to seeing all the angled runners and ports and all that stuff. I think that's going to be really cool. And based on just your products already, I think that whatever you can come up with that utilizes a full 5 axis machine is going to be really nuts. So I definitely look forward to it.
I know. So am I. I'm ready.
Awesome.
I haven't had a challenge that has had me hesitant in a while, but it's a good hesitancy. I'm ready to see this thing run.
Definitely. Well, Tony, I really appreciate you taking all the time to tell us your story and, kind of get to dive into your mind of what's behind your company. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it, man. Anytime, Dylan.
And thanks to all the Patreon members and listeners. You guys make this show possible. I'll be back next week.